this up. Here we are. Done. Get this going here. This on my friends. There. Let's see. Now I need to go back to my video. Get this. Boom. Here and paste. Okay. Now I'm going to go back here. How do you get to what? Before I get into, hopefully YouTube has me on there because I want to get this stuff out. And I saw where the enforcer, I watched a bit of it, even though they called me a liar. Let's see. I need to get that screen. I need to get that other screen. Oh shit, I forgot to get that. Let me see if I can. I might have to end it. Yeah, I'm gonna end it. No. Fuck. No cancel. Where is it? There's no one. Where is my folder here? Phone. Alright. That's the one. Alright. Which one? Switch? Got that here as well. Just forget that. Get this. Alright. I did get, before I get to all that other stuff, because I got all these videos and everything, I need to make sure everything's edited right and everything. I have been, there's always UFOs here where I live and everything. First of all, welcome to Tato's Hardcore Media. Hope everyone's had a good night and morning, night and day, wherever you are. I've noticing here a lot more, like I've been telling some people, that drones, that UFOs have been camouflaging more and looking like drones. Tonight, I've noticed that there was a triangular configuration of drones, and I noticed there's more. It seems like more Air Force activity around where the UFOs that I make videos of and pictures of and everything. And I don't know. I was out there and excuse me, sorry, I just had something, cough syrup as well. Sorry. I went out there and I want to see. There's this couple, and I want to see if they wanted to see some UFOs with me out there. And so I went out there, and I knew something was off with these drones and other activity in the sky. And well, I know that they're out there and everything. They're always out there, these UFOs, these ETs. I know they're always out there. It's like I felt like there's a danger out there with our military and law enforcement traffic out there, the drones and everything that was out there. I feel like the government seems to be watching the area that I'm watching, and that's a bad thing, because they like to down some of these objects, and I'd be very beyond upset if they ever did something down these objects that I see all the time here, and stuff. And I just got like a danger sense and something was off, and I could see them. They're like way out there, just sort of low visibility, just turned off and everything. So I know that they're there, and everything. So anyways, I'd go after the government if they did something with those objects. Let me see here. I want to get to, let's see. I want to get to this.
Hey, News Nation YouTube viewers, I'm super excited to bring you Drop Dead Serious. If you've been watching my podcast over on Drop Dead Serious, I'm bringing it to you here on News Nation as well. We've got a great collaboration that's going, and I'm super excited that we're doing this and that you're here for it. And by the way, this is only the beginning. You're going to see regular content on the News Nation YouTube channel that is Drop Dead Serious content. And by the way, head over to Drop Dead Serious and check out our merch and all of our other topics that we're covering as well. But without further ado, this is Drop Dead Serious on News Nation's YouTube channel. Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Banfield. This is Drop Dead Serious. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to subscribe. So listen, I know that the majority of true crime fanatics have been following the Nancy Guthrie kid. If he does go missing, he's been in that neighborhood laboratory at Wright-Patterson. And this is why it's so critical that we know what happened to General McCaslin because of his connections to Wright-Patterson. His resume.
I just have to go through the Enforcer channel, and I don't get how people could be so retarded not to know the truth that UFOs have been here as long as humans have, and that people don't know about JFK. They call it conspiracy theories, and they're real. Okay, they talk about it. Government officials talk about it all the time. Whistleblowers have been out there. So why is this bullshit? That smart as they are, I do not get how they do not know the truth. Because I've always known this, and everything is just, people like me is the dumbest thing ever. Let me see, but
has obviously, upped the ante on the fascination factor of this disappearance. Look, people disappear a lot in America. There are missing persons cases every single day, many of them. Right. But General McCaslin's is different because Once his disappearance became public, people began looking at not only his military service, but also at the UFO and UAP conversations that may have surrounded parts of his life on the job and his post-retirement life. General McCaslin's wife, Susan McCaslin Wilkerson, has spoken publicly about the circumstance that she is in with her missing husband. And there's some controversy and there's some interesting things that she has said. First and foremost, she has really tamped down any of the conspiracy theories that maybe someone in the UAP community.
I see these bitches always say these are conspiracy theories. They're rooted in fact. There's fact to them. And it pisses me off that they say conspiracy. This is what so-called what's wrong mainstream news, making up this bullshit and everything to call stuff conspiracy, when we've always been right about these so-called conspiracies, whether it has to do with JFK, RFK, or having to do with Martin Luther King, or CIA being involved in, certain clandestine operations, or UFOs. These idiots say conspiracy theories. I wish they'd shut the fuck up. Stop calling it that.
Quote, is one of the most significant figures ever to be linked to the disclosure conversations around unidentified
But anyways, his stupid wife said that, he didn't know all this stuff about UFOs. It couldn't have been because of that. It's like, he wasn't in the know about all this stuff, and that's what his wife has said and everything, and it's like she has no idea. Like I said, once you're in the know, you're in the know all the time. You know stuff. You know it all the time. Once you're in there, you're in it. You know stuff. I mean, there's certain things that, you're not going to know that's going on, but you still know what's going on. I know what's going on and everything, and it's like, this is what these screw-ups don't know or whatever.
Aerial phenomena. And described him as, quote, someone who has served at the highest levels of Air Force and defense world with oversight of classified aerospace and special programs. Here's my conversation with him. Ross, why is the story of General McCaslin, for lack of a better description, not bigger?
Look, Ashley, it's a very complex issue why General McCaslin is such an important figure.
Well, the reason is, like I said, it's UFOs. And stuff that he knows, and criminal activity with keeping people shut up, and our own government kills people to keep things shut up and everything, to keep things silent, including the FBI as well, knowing stuff. So, I mean, I don't trust the FBI and everything, because they have as much to do with keeping, stuff secret as, these cartels, these contractors, military contractors that's doing all this illegal stuff, with UFOs and retrievals and human trafficking and everything. So,
in not just national security, but especially the UAP mystery, the mystery UFO. Of unidentified anomalous phenomena. I noticed there's been a lot of ill-informed commentary speculating that it's all nonsense and there's nothing to this. He lost his clearances in 2013 when he left the Air Force. He couldn't possibly know anything now that would be useful, and all the UFO stuff is just specious nonsense. That is not the case. General Neil McCaslin was recorded in leaks that were leaked by the Russian GRU, where they tapped in to the private Gmail of John Podesta. John Podesta was Hillary Clinton.
And here people think that the Russians are idiots. People always say how stupid the Russians are, but there are certain things they can be very good at. But anyways.
Clinton's campaign manager in the years running up to the 2016 election. And as you would remember, Ashley, back then, everybody thought Trump had an ice cube's chance in hell of winning against Hillary Clinton. She was seen as a dead cert, rightly or wrongly. And a lot of the people in the Pentagon who've been protecting what I think is one of the biggest secrets in human history, the mystery of non-human intelligence engaging with this planet, they knew the game was up. And so a covert liaison began between John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, and people like Robert Weiss, the chief executive of Skunk Works at Lockheed Martin, General Michael Carey, a former very senior US Air Force Space Command general, and General Neil McCasland. And, believe it or not, Tom DeLonge, the lead singer of Blink-182, the rock band. Why on earth was this disparate group of people meeting? Well, the leaked emails that were eventually posted on WikiLeaks through the GRU, Russian military intelligence, they show that for many months prior to the election, there was an ongoing conversation between General Neil McCasland and all of these people about UAP disclosure, about revealing the existence of a non-human intelligence engaging with this planet. This is why a lot of people who are saying there's nothing to this have no idea what they're talking about. And it really shocks me that one of the things we forget is our history, and if we forget our history, we forget the real story. General Neil McCasland isn't just one of the most senior generals in the US military, now retired. He's somebody who was cleared to the very highest levels of some of our deepest, darkest and most important national security secrets. He was for a while in charge of all SAPs, Special Access Programs. He was the liaison who handled the administration of SAPs, which is essentially America's deepest, darkest secrets. He then went on until 2013 to be the commander of the US Air Force's research laboratories at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And it's Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where most of the military's secret investigations into weaponry, aerospace, new technologies, new propulsion systems are done. It's a massive facility with extensive underground structures. General Neil McCasland ran the whole joint. Now, sadly, I feel terribly for his wife, Susan. She's spoken publicly and issued a statement, and she's obviously distressed by the speculation that Neil McCasland might have been abducted or kidnapped or taken by potentially some foreign adversary power, or maybe some private military contractor that doesn't want him to talk about something. And she's concerned that there's excessive speculation that because of his past employment in the Air Force, it might lead to an over-speculation that he knows something now. The simple fact is, he does. General Neil McCasland has some of the biggest secrets in his head, not just about the UFO UAP mystery. You can put that aside for one moment. He's cleared to top secret compartmented levels up to 2013 on secrets that still persist to this day about American weaponry, technology, space.
I get this strong thing in my head. I'm calling them about saying foreign, but I'm saying what if I'm wrong? And there's a reason I'm going back on that. I could be a retard sometimes. I can admit, but I can be stupid. There's plenty of times. One thing is that McCasland took off his watch, ring, and all this other stuff. He left his phone and everything else. I don't know. But why would he go to a foreign country such as Russia or China? I mean, money. But the thing is, he has a wife, family. Excuse me. For whatever. That's the thing. The one thing is, like I said, I know people that, you know, when you know their time's come to be killed, I know people will some people will take off their watch, take off their rings, they'll leave the phone there, and they'll go out. You know, it's not just the mafia that this happens in, it's other instances that I know of and everything. But for all I know, I could be wrong. But I just I think that this could be our own government as well that wants them shut up, wants them dead, because he did want to. They said they want, that he wanted whistleblow and put out all the stuff out there for America to know. Come on.
Weapons, but also, and this is proven in these leaked emails from WikiLeaks, also the UAP mystery. And it was incredibly Tom DeLonge, the lead singer of Blink-182, who went into detail about what General Neil McCasland admitted he knew because of his privileged information as a senior US Air Force general. He told Tom DeLonge that during the Cold War, the United States found a life form, an alien life form, and that he retrieved and oversaw the retrieval of alien spacecraft. This is a reality. It's not idle speculation. This is a truth admitted by a...
Yeah, so the people at The Enforcer and these other channels, these are facts. This isn't a stupid conspiracy thing. It's just that we put out the facts here. That's it. Alright? Whether people choose to believe these facts about our government doing things, that you don't understand is beyond your comprehension, and everything, doesn't mean that they're not real,
Senior Pentagon general to, believe it or not, incredibly, you couldn't write this as a movie, a rock star who was fascinated in UFOs.
Well, lest anybody think it's just a rock star, he's also a documentary producer, and he's doing projects, of that ilk. So it's not just he reached out to a rock musician. There was more to it. Well, I'm curious, though, about General McCasland's interactions with the U.S. government, whether there had been a lot of plans for him to testify at any point, whether he'd made overtures that we know of. What do you know about his background and what he wanted to do, or what maybe the government wanted him to do or not?
Okay, we do know that barely a few weeks prior to General Neil McCasland's disappearance on February the 27th, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, made a promise. He made that promise on social media, on Truth Social. He didn't yet make it as an executive order, but what he pledged was that he would declassify the UAP files, including files on
UFO.
Extraterrestrial life. In any other context, this would be treated as an extraordinary news story, but there is some kind of mental block at the moment in so much of the legacy news media. They failed to pick up on the enormous significance of what Donald Trump was signaling. President Trump has been briefed. I know he's been briefed. Very limited briefing, but he's certainly apprised now of the existence of a non-human intelligence engaging with this planet. He knows that his Pentagon has been flat out lying to the American public for much of the last 70, 80 years. And for me as a journalist, it was a huge leap to realise that this was the case. I've been raised with an expectation that America is one of the great moral leaders of the world, that it's essentially protected us from tyranny and authoritarian rule for the last...
That's why they want to keep this stuff a secret, because they lose the high ground where the U.S. is no better than, Russia, China, and these other, Islamic, Republic of Iran, and so is, because what people don't know is the crimes that these contractors have been committing, with murder and willing to kill people for information that another contractor has, and they want to kill those guys, get their info, their laptop with classified information and stuff, and so they can have it. It's like cartel wars. And everything. I want people to really look into this stuff, do your own investigations. Don't go by what I say, do your own as well, and everything. So that's the thing, is that they if he comes out and says all this stuff is real, people are say, okay, well, what about accountability? What about these crimes that have been committed? Keep it a secret. Well, the government does not want that. Parts of the government, I should say, National Security Council, CIA, and these contractors, they don't want to be held accountable for including, cancer that my father and other guys that I know of have gotten from working on top secret programs. They don't want to pay people, they never do, for anything. They don't care about their own military as well as they should either. So,
80 plus years since the end of World War II, we look to America for moral leadership. And what shocked me as an investigative journalist getting into this subject matter was to realise that the truth was vastly different from that represented by the US Defence Department. The public has been lied to, and President Trump realised this. And the interesting thing is, what's happening at the moment is Trump has very slowly started indicating that he's willing to pull back the layers, to show the public what the deep state, and this does fit with his moral narrative, that there's this deep state that has been withholding information from the American public, and indeed, he believes, trying to undermine his authority and his potential leadership. So for him, there's a motivation in revealing what he knows. Now, I got told by people very close to the Trump camp that in his first administration, he was going to make a disclosure about UAPs.
And what happened?
Yeah.
He got scared.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to have to say this about the most powerful person.
Well, it's like I said, they could kill him. They've killed presidents before. And Trump is no exception. I mean, he's had, their big guys have almost killed him before, except, this time they make sure to put the nail in the coffin, pretty much, and everything. So, I mean,
in the world, but the commander-in-chief of the US military was scared of his own government. He became aware that there are forces inside the US government that frankly would and have killed to protect this secret. And he wasn't entirely confident that he could feel safe in making a statement at the time about what he knows.
So many people would say, that's impossible. Donald Trump feels as though he's omnipotent at this point, given all of the actions that he's taken recently by executive action, going to war without Congress, etc. What kind of people would have any kind of threat power over the president?
For quite some time, there has been a warning in America, and it goes right back to President Eisenhower's speech when he left office. And if you remember, he talked about a military-industrial complex that was out of control. And that was quite something from the man who'd led America to victory in World War II. President Eisenhower, in one of the last statements that he made as the President of the United States, warned the American public that he was concerned that there was a military-industrial complex that was actually getting out of control. What I've been investigating for much of the last 8 years, and every time I start digging, I find more and more to substantiate this view, is that there is a private military contractor industrial complex that is completely out of control. A lot of what is going on in America at the moment is due to the fact that trillions of dollars have been expended on expenditure that is being kept secret from the American public. This isn't something that's been concealed, the fact of this expenditure. You might remember that prior to 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld, the Defense Secretary, actually admitted that there were trillions of dollars that couldn't be accounted for in the defense budget. There are people like Catherine Austin Fitts, a former very senior government official, who's admitted that when she did audits, there were vast amounts of US defense expenditure that could not be accounted for. Frankly...
Anything more than usual, though, Ross? I mean, in every war that I've ever covered, there's always been, the missing bags and bags of money. And when I say bags, I mean millions and millions. It's not out of the ordinary for war.
No, it is. The level of money we're talking about here is billions and trillions trillions of dollars. And one of the things I've been doing is investigating claims that, for example, private military contractors have been involved in the retrieval of non-human technology, that they were seeded technology that was originally being held by the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense that was retrieved from places like Roswell in 1947, Kingman, Aztec, a whole series of alleged crashes, some of...
Yeah, people also have to think about this. If Trump or any other president was going to let out, they already have about that UFOs, ETs are real. There comes these implications, and people are asking about alien abductions, which are real. Why are we allowing that when we're doubting some other intelligent craft? Why are you going after, and I know some ETs myself, because I have contact with some outside here and everything, and the thing is, why are they seem to be going after a lot of the friendly ones, or ones that are not causing trouble, but not going after ones that are doing abductions and stuff? And what about the criminality of human trafficking with people with psychic abilities that can, tell the military where a UFO crashes, or that could pilot these UFO craft and everything, because you have to have these special abilities to a certain point to pilot these craft and everything. And how to get these people sometimes can be criminal.
Which have actually surfaced into popular mythology, but which have been successfully suppressed with disinformation by a very, very clever strategy of disinformation and psychological operations run by the government and by private contractors. But what has been going on is a lot of what America knows about the UAP mystery has been privatized. It's gone into the private world. And I know that there have been literally blue-on-blue confrontations where American troops under the command of JSOC were actually sent to retrieve a craft, an object that crashed, I think it was in Mexico, and in the course of their attempted retrieval, US Special Forces soldiers were killed or wounded by private military contractors who were trying to protect what was allegedly their technology. And this is how absurd it's got, that this ridiculous Cold War has been going on between the Russians, the Chinese, and the Americans. There's been so much secrecy now about this legacy program involving the retrieval of non-human technology. Not only are we in competition with the Russians and Chinese over it, there are battles, in some cases deaths, where people have been killed in an effort to protect and retrieve this technology. That's how serious this is. I've spoken to people who say that people have been murdered to protect this secret. Now, this is what we've been trying to get Congress to investigate, but sadly, Congress has shown that it's completely ineffectual and very much in the thrall of many of these private military...
This is something I have to get to also. Some Congress is compromised where they're working with intelligence, with these contractors, to keep the truth from coming out as well. They cannot be trusted either. So you can see the enemy is within our Congress as well. You can't trust them as well.
Military contractors that exercise such an undue influence in the Congress.
Quick note about this podcast and News Nation's coverage of the story as well. Jesse Weber, who is just chef's kiss when it comes to true crime coverage, is doing some amazing work for News Nation at 11 o'clock Eastern. So check out his show and you'll find a whole bunch more content on this particular story. And then check out the rest of News Nation as well. Marnie Hughes does a great job. And really you'll see a lot of the true crime stories that I do on News Nation as well. So obviously that brings the conversation back to General McCaslin, because there are so many potential theories as to what might have happened. And I want to go back to his wife for a moment, because I feel as though if anybody knows that General McCaslin might have been a target, it might be his wife.
No,
and she's the one person who
not.
seems to be throwing cold water on the possibility that there could be something very nefarious afoot because of his background. One of the things that she said recently, and this is a direct quote from her, which I found to be surprising, and I wanted to get your reaction. She was frustrated with some of the theorizing on who may have taken him and for what reason, and she said this, quote, "Maybe the best hypothesis is that aliens beamed him up to the mothership. However, no sightings of a mothership hovering above the Sandia Mountains have been reported." Obviously very tongue-in-cheek during a very serious time. What's your reaction to that?
I was surprised that Susan Wilkerson said that. Susan's a former lieutenant colonel, or maybe still a serving lieutenant colonel in the US Air Force, and a former astronaut trainee. So she would know. I mean, I don't know if she was as cleared as highly as her husband was. I know a lot of these people, most of them are men, when they talk...
This is the thing, it doesn't matter if she was in the military or not, is that I know from personal experience, from my father and other people that have worked on UFO programs and other top secret programs, your phones are being listened to by the government to know if you're spilling the beans on stuff. They can put recording stuff in your homes. They got the FBI do that, or CIA, whoever, and that's part of the process and everything. They want to make sure that you have no marriage problems, no relationship problems, no family problems. They go through your past, criminal history, make sure you don't. They want to make sure that you don't have any psychiatric problems as well. They go and sometimes question your friends, your neighbors, and ask about you. And sometimes they're to ask the wife. But usually, a lot of times, they're just going to bug your phone, which is, it's always they have a right to do if you're on these special access programs and stuff like that. I can see why in some instances. All right. And the thing is, my father would never talk about the most secretive stuff. My father would go as far as say, I've heard stuff, I've heard this and everything, I've heard of this or that and everything, and it's like how you take that is one thing. My father knew people that knew stuff about UFOs and secret installations, stuff like that. But the thing is that, you're not going to tell your wife this stuff because the government is also listening in. When you make a call from these bases to your wife, when you're working at these secret installations, and you're talking to your wife or family or whatever, loved one, okay? They're listening in. It's like being in jail, where they're always monitoring your phone call to see if you slip up, say something that can implicate you in a crime. You're always being recorded and stuff like that. And so for her to say, oh, the wife is always going to know, bullshit. They're not. It doesn't matter if she's a lieutenant colonel. Now, there is some stuff they could have told her, but then again, I mean, if my wife was a lieutenant colonel, I knew stuff, I'm not going to tell her everything, okay? I hate to burst your bubble, lady, but there's certain stuff my lady doesn't need to know, okay? I hate to burst your ego here, the wife's ego or husband's or whoever, but yeah, you got a big ego if you think that. Oh my God. Anyways.
To their families, in order to protect their families, they keep secrets. They don't share with their wives. So it's very likely, I think, that she's completely unaware of what Neil was involved in, particularly with Lockheed Martin fellow generals and John Podesta in the run-up to the 2016 election. I think she probably knows, because of the leaked emails, that he was in communication with the White House. Definitely. Podesta, of course, was a former Obama senior policy advisor. Very, very highly connected Democrat with great connections.
I know, but I think is one reason why she said that is she has to watch her own ass. I think that she's a bit scared, and she has to watch her own ass about what she says, because she's still in the military. She's a lieutenant colonel. From what they say, she is being watched, and that's a scary position to be in. I'd want to be out of that position, by the way. Couldn't pay me enough.
The highest levels of the Democratic Party. And what we're talking about here is something that she may not simply be aware of. I know.
Although if I'm aware of as much as I'm aware, clearly she would be she'd be far more informed about this.
Well,
and I just also wonder, his background alone, it just screams there's a possibility. Why would she be so anathema? Why would it be so anathema to her?
Well, look, I think nobody wants to think about the possibility that your husband may have been taken by someone unfriendly. At the moment, by the way, I should emphasise, there's been no official statement that Neil McCasland has been taken, abducted. Right. The official story at the moment is that he's perhaps in some way incapacitated, and that he's got lost on a trail somewhere around the running trails of Albuquerque. I have to say,
that's where it's like I feel like maybe a switch flipped in him, because some people that have worked on special UFO programs have talked about where Central CIA or a part of that will come in, they'll put programming in your head or erase your memory. Yeah, they'll put in things to, when you get out, to erase your memory. My father, later in life, I don't know, it's crazy how some guys that know stuff just get Alzheimer's or dementia and stuff, and they lose stuff, and like a switch that they just forget. And the thing is, this guy McCasland, he also left his glasses. That makes no sense. You have to see where you're going, no matter where you are. Okay? Me, I can see UFOs. I don't know, they make themselves known to me. I can see them very up close, but I can't see stuff that's right in front of me sometimes. I can't. I can't see cars that are right in front of me sometimes, but I think they make themselves known to me that they're there. Yeah, they do, from what people tell me. They're sure that they do that and stuff, but it's crazy. You have to have your glasses. You have to be able to put one foot in front of the other to know that you're going hiking. You have to make sure you know the distance to separate your feet, to put your foot up on a rock and you don't trip over a rock. And I've been in the mountains. I've been, hiking before. And one misstep, you can have a broken ankle, broken leg, and you're dead. That's it. You have to have your glasses, and you have to have a phone, just in case an accident happens. That makes no sense.
Frankly, that makes no sense after 12, 13 days. If he did go on a running trail, he would have been found by now. I've seen reports from Susan Wilkerson, his wife, that he left his watch at home, which is unusual for a runner. Most runners want to monitor their heart rate and their pace. It doesn't seem right. He also left his phone at home, and more importantly, she also couldn't account for what shoes he was allegedly wearing at the time. There's a lot of question marks, frankly, about the whole argument, the whole claim that he would have gone missing on a running trail. We don't know.
Hey, listen,
we don't know that he did.
Right, we don't, but I'll tell you what, on occasion I'm a runner, not often, but there is no way that I would go to a trail without a watch or a phone or some communication, especially if there's a trail that has a danger where there's a falling, risk. I just feel that anybody who's been around the block a few times, like me, and certainly at 68, I think, years old, he's been around the block, would ever do something that risky without some sort of location device or communication device. It just doesn't match the smell test.
I agree with you. And look, I don't want to distress Susan Wilkerson. It must be terrible to be losing your loved one and wondering
Agreed.
where the hell he is. And I sincerely hope that General McCasland is found soon. And frankly, I do hope that the simple explanation is that he just got lost, or that there's been some medical misadventure, and I sincerely hope he's soon reunited with his family. Frankly, as each day goes by, I think we increasingly have to look at the possibility of foul play. And the fact that the FBI is now more overtly involved, that we've got people from Kirtland Air Force Base now engaged, and that the local sheriff is now talking about securing the video cameras from people's homes, means that the search is now intensifying. They're now looking at alternative explanations as to what possibly happened. I've had people contact me in the security industry who knew General Neil McCasland, who tell me that they're not happy with the original status of the FBI investigation, that they felt that the FBI was doing a very, very half-hearted investigation. There was a lot of talk, for example, that there'd been no mobile phone alert posted. I mean, one of the first things you do when somebody goes missing is you put their face out on a mobile phone alert in the area, inviting anyone with a mobile phone to look at the photograph and see whether that person's been seen anywhere in the vicinity.
Silver alert, which they've done, right? They put out the silver alert. I don't know how long it took them.
No, I don't think there's been the full mobile phone alert. It's been raised. There has been a silver alert, but I don't think there's been the level of notification that you would ordinarily see for somebody who's gone missing. I've spoken to people in the military who think that it is being underplayed by the government, the significance of General Neil McCasland's disappearance. I don't want to suggest that there is necessarily a synchronicity between his past involvement in what was clearly a push for UAP disclosure, but certainly it's an interesting connection that he disappeared so soon after Donald Trump made his announcement that he was going to be transparent. It's also
do you think it's possible that his wife Susan may be downplaying this as part of any kind of strategy, that this isn't just her verbiage, that maybe
an idiot. And the thing is, I think about it, I could be the idiot for saying she's an idiot. I have to say that because I do say stupid things quite a bit sometimes. Is that she could be downplaying it to save her own ass. She is in the military still, and I think that's probably what she did, is that she saved her own ass. Because what she said was totally idiotic and stupid. And I don't know if any wife that would say something stupid as she did, that her husband was taken by aliens, maybe. It's like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? I mean, that's... Yeah, that 0.05% chance. Are you kidding? It's like she's made a joke out of it. And it's like, that's just ridiculous. And I think she did save her ass.
maybe there's guidance?
I've got no idea. I really don't know. It would be idle for me to speculate, and frankly, I wouldn't want to distress Susan. The terrible possibility here is that someone's taken him. And I sincerely hope it's not foreign adversary rivals. But I was distressed to see that Susan was suggesting that because his security classification ended in 2013 in the Air Force, he wouldn't be of much value now. Frankly, with the secrets that are locked up in General Neil McCasland's head from his years of managing special access programs, there is absolutely no doubt at all that even this many years on, 13 years later, he knows things that people would want to know. And so I don't want to be put in the position of taking an opposite view to Susan Wilkerson, and I respect and understand her deep emotion about losing her husband at this time. I sincerely hope she's reunited with him. But there are serious questions that need to be asked. I find the the lack of an aggressive official response in the very early days quite puzzling. And a lot of his friends and colleagues are saying to me they really want questions asked about General Neil McCaslin's disappearance. To all of them, it's a serious mystery. This man is and was a very cautious human being. You quite rightly say he wouldn't have left the house without his phone and his watch. He was an extremely methodical, highly intelligent, extremely fit man. Just a week earlier, he'd cycled 60 miles. So the idea that he might have been so medically incapacitated that he might have fallen down on a trail,
not possible.
It just doesn't make sense.
Well, Ross, what about the possibility that he left his home without a phone and a watch because that's what he wanted to do? That he may, obviously some are speculating he may have been having a clandestine meeting with someone and did not want to be tracked. But who would or could it be that he'd want that kind of a meeting with?
Well, okay. I mean, one of the possibilities is foreign adversary rivals, and another possibility is private military contractors who don't want General Neil McCaslin to talk about the UAP subject. I mean, no matter, I know it's unpleasant for people, and there's a tendency to ridicule and giggle.
The thing is, if I knew that my time was up, I want them to be able to track. I want that cell phone tower to ping my position. I want to say, if I'm going down, if I'm getting killed, then I want to take these mother effers with me as well. I want to at least know the last known position where I was. I want them to be able to track me as much as possible. That's just me, you know. I think other people will be the same, but I think something like a switch flipped in his head. It's like something else took over his mind. Do what he did.
And mock and stigmatise, but we have to overcome this stigma. The simple fact is, it's a matter of public record that General Neil McCaslin was liaising with the very highest levels of the White House and discussing UAP disclosure 10 years ago. So get over it, these people who think that this is something that can be dismissed with ridicule and taboo. The simple fact is it does need to seriously be considered that there is some connection between his UAP knowledge and the reasons for his disappearance. And it does seem like an extraordinary coincidence, an extraordinary synchronicity that his disappearance happened so soon after President Trump made his announcement on Truth Social. I sincerely hope that what we see are the authorities getting to the truth of this and showing a little more aggression and zeal to actually find the general. It would be good to see senior leadership in the US Air Force, the US military, and indeed in the White House expressing concern about the disappearance of one of the most senior generals in the history of recent times in the Pentagon. This guy is a very, very highly respected person. He's a good human being, loved by his family and respected by his friends. His disappearance shouldn't go unnoticed. And more importantly, his loss at the moment is a grave national security concern by any measure. Because even though he left the Air Force in 2013, the secrets that are locked up in his head are still relevant today. And also, the company that he's been working with, ATA, Applied Technologies, they do a lot of work with the US Defense Department, a lot of very high-level work on some new extraordinary technologies, most of which are classified. It defies explanation to me that it's not a bigger issue, that the general's disappearance is not on the front pages of the newspapers.
And quite frankly, from 2013 until now, 13 years, has there been so much that's happened that's news or new and critical that it dwarfs what he would have known prior to 2013?
No. I mean, the simple fact is, one of the bears in the room at the moment is Nothing much has happened in US aerospace technology in the last 30 or 40 years. And it's pretty obvious America's been developing stuff in the black, which is great news. I mean, we should all be proud and very happy that America is developing technologies, which means that hopefully we can defeat our foreign adversary rivals in the event, God forbid, of a confrontation. But the man who has been at the apex of those discoveries is General Neil McCasland. This is why it's utterly absurd to try and play down any suggestion that he wouldn't know things, that he would know things that are militarily sensitive. Of course he knows things. And this is the point. I believe that America is concealing breakthroughs in propulsion, energy, weapons systems that they're sitting on in the event of possible confrontation. And the fact that the man who was very much at the highest levels of overseeing those developments, those new weapons, those new propulsion systems, has disappeared is a matter of grave public concern.
Is it possible, I mean, you've mentioned defense contractors, private defense contractors, you've mentioned foreign adversaries. I'm assuming when you say foreign, you mean foreign borders, not foreign planets or solar systems,
Susan's right. I mean, I don't think there's any evidence at all that he's been taken by aliens.
Yeah.
No, but the simple fact is we're talking here about Russia, China, anybody that's got a hostile intent.
And I assume that's what you meant. I just wanted to make our audience clear that's what you meant. But is it possible at all that the third possibility might be the U.S. government themselves were trying to quiet General McCasland if he was planning to talk out of step?
Well, we do know, it's a matter of public record, that 10 years ago, General Neil McCasland was leading an initiative to disclose UAP transparency. He wanted the public to know what he knew. 10 years later, just a few weeks after the president makes an announcement that he's going to disclose UAP secrets, what happens? The general who was one of the principal architects of a secret move with the Democrats to reveal UAP's secrecy disappears. Now, I'm sorry, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory to suggest there might be a link. Why the hell are we burying our heads in the sand on this issue? The question has to be asked. I sincerely hope, for his family's sake, that it turns out to be a simple case of medical misadventure and that there's nothing sinister in his disappearance. But we're 12, 13, 14 days now into the disappearance of an extremely senior, retired, former US Air Force general with some of the biggest secrets in the US military-industrial complex in his head, including the secrets that the US government holds on UAPs. We shouldn't bury our head in the sand on the possibility that there might be a link, a connection. And what needs to be seen is far more aggression in terms of searching for the general. I know there's concerns among his friends and certain colleagues at certain aerospace companies that I've spoken to, that this general, his disappearance has largely gone unacknowledged in legacy media. Why?
Yeah.
I mean,
the only thing I can say, and I believe that the Nancy Guthrie case has swallowed every ounce of oxygen that's been out there, but also, America's just gone to war, and that's also dominated the headlines, and maybe that's one of the reasons that General McCaskill's disappearance didn't get bigger headlines, but it's starting to. And I also just want to tug on one more thread there. When the president makes proclamations, like on Air Force One, he said the Nancy Guthrie case was about to be solved, and that was, I think, in week 2. That didn't happen. And sometimes he says things that aren't actually going to happen, says things off the cuff. And even I've spoken to people who work with the president who says sometimes he just says what he saw on his desk, So do you think that his comments about a disclosure of the UAP program and America's knowledge was just one of those moments where he just said what he'd heard recently, but it didn't have teeth?
Look, I think the president was looking for a distraction from the Epstein files, to be perfectly honest. I think he saw an opportunity to divert people away from the public attention on the Epstein case. I sincerely hope that he's serious about UAP transparency, because he should be. Because if Donald Trump is looking for evidence of a deep state, a malevolent deep state that is operating...
I'm not going to, with Epstein, I'm not going to say that he was doing things with underage girls. All right, there's some dirty stuff. I know that he was involved in this, that people can search on the internet and stuff with him having to do with, you know, with stuff. And I don't feel like doing too much right now with that. But there is Democrats and Republicans, people from intelligence that are involved with this. The most powerful people have, you know, stuff to do with Epstein and Island, Bill Clinton, you know, the Prince Andrew, different people, rich, powerful people from Arabia, and like I said, they'd be getting away with murder, of course, these people. And some of these people are butt ugly. I feel sorry for the girls that were enslaved and had to be with old bags of flesh like that, and everything, and people associated. The thing is, it's not just Republican, not just Trump involved with this. Both sides are, and you see both sides do not want to have much to do with this. I don't want this to be out there, but there needs to be accountability, because, like I said, if it was an average Joe or Jane, you know, they'd be rotting in prison for life right now, with lots of multiple life sentences or whatever, right? And this proves it, and everything. Feel as safe. It's not just one side; it's both sides. Anyways.
Against the best interests of the American people, he will find it in the UAP subject. A lot of the people who are, I think, calling themselves patriots inside private military contractors, who believe that they're doing the best thing in the interests of the United States by concealing this incredible secret from the American public, I think they're deluding themselves. We know for a fact that there is a legacy retrieval and reverse engineering program of non-human technology. David Grush gave evidence about this under oath to the US Congress. Jake Barber went public with me on News Nation describing his first-hand involvement with a covert military program retrieving a non-human craft. What more evidence does the American public, the American government, and the American Congress need to start taking this issue seriously? And President Trump really should, I think, be thinking about his legacy. If he's thinking of achieving greatness as a president, imagine if he had the opportunity to be the president who definitively revealed, yes, there is a dark state. There is a deep state. It's been hiding this incredible secret from you, the American public, for the last 80 plus years. And this is what we know. I actually think this is the biggest story in human history, and so do many people in the military, in the intelligence community, and in private military contractors who think it's time you, the American public, were told the truth about what's really going on. And yet, time and time again, Congress has failed. It's dropped the ball. We had UAP disclosure legislation on the books prior to Christmas that would have allowed contractors, people inside those private military contractor companies, to feel safe about coming forward and giving the evidence that they wanted to give. But corrupt politicians at senior levels in some of the most senior oversight committees in the Congress allowed themselves to be manipulated by private military contractors that used their evidence, their influence malignly and malevolently to suppress this story. If President Trump is looking for a...
What kind of blackmail do they have on these people? Do these military contractors have on the most powerful people in Congress? What do they have on them? That's kind of scary. Just saying. I mean, that they could just, you know, make them say, you know, before they want to know about UFOs, and then, like the Senate Arms Committee, then they say, we don't have any proof of UFOs. We don't know anything about any extraterrestrials. or before, about 6 months before or the year before, they're talking about how they were real and everything. Then they went back. There's something, very wicked going on. Very true.
Moment of moral greatness. This is his opportunity to make his mark.
Ross Coulthart, I could talk to you forever, and I know your time is limited. I know you've got a wedding coming up in the family, too, so congratulations.
Do. Thank you very much, Ashley. Yeah,
the best to your daughter, and it must just be a wonderful time in your household. Will you talk to me again about this?
Sure.
Again, some other time when you have less weddings in the offing?
No problem at all. Very happy to. And
all right. So, again, shout out to News Nation. I want to go here to X about Jake Barber here and this stuff that's been going on. Let me see here. This is David Grush on here.
Obviously, I was never physically. Of the 40 people we did interview,
this is David Grush. He was a whistleblower about UFO. Talk about how we have UFO, we have retrievals and crashes. Programs with re-engineering craft and stuff like that.
I'd say about 10 to 12 of them had concerns about wet work, murders in the past, people going missing in their workplace. I certainly had some disturbing things happen to me in my personal life from a physical intimidation perspective, which I reported to my agency's counterintelligence element when I was still in government. Obviously, I was never physically harmed, but I certainly saw signatures of what I thought was illicit extra-governmental activity as it related to intimidating me and some of my other colleagues. Just was very, very disturbing and upsetting information. So I don't have any personal knowledge of that kind of stuff, but I did talk to firsthand witnesses who had very high credentials, that were government officials, that did espouse that concern of illicit wet work and other physical intimidation type activities. So
what happened to me personally was very disturbing. So I have to be very vague about this because
is it you doing double talk? It's like I heard stuff, but I didn't. I've heard things, but I didn't. I know, may know, but I don't know. He's really, really trying to say his
investigation, but I think you'll understand what I'm saying. Is they showed my wife and I they can touch me at any time, 2 times, and it was very disturbing. It was in conjunction with some other people getting a message like that are, let's say, publicly well known. Some that aren't publicly well known.
I was told that there were 2 names on a list of people that I was looking through and I was warned to not reach out to those individuals because they have the capabilities and would have no problem having someone like me killed, which I found startling. But I've heard that in the narrative of this topic. This isn't the first time I've heard about that. And the dangers of this.
He's very nervous.
But it was the first time that I got, I would say that's probably the closest to that I've come.
Do you believe that just your inquiry into this subject could indeed spur a mortal threat to you? Do you believe that? You were told that, but do you believe that?
If if any of the stories are true about some of the crimes that have been taking place,
they are.
If any of that's true, I do believe that, and so I know just from working with some individuals, David and Jake Barber, that I can tell that they really mean it when they have feared for their lives on this topic.
Do you believe that this is connected in any way to the UFO thing? Just your belief, and then 2, do you know anything that I don't? Because I don't know a lot about that case.
Well, General McCaslin definitely is connected to the UAP topic, and I know that he is someone that we have been wanting to try to talk to. I know Grush has attempted to communicate with him and he's been actually. I'm surprised that anything is happening, or that has something that has happened to him, given the fact that he has been pretty difficult to communicate on. Every time that anybody's reached out to him, he said that he has nothing to say on the topic. So maybe I don't know, but he certainly, we believe that he has a lot to say about this topic.
Yeah, he did. Let's see here. Let's see, Dave Rush on UFO witnesses saying they were afraid of being killed, right? The 40 people we did an interview, I'd say about 10 to 12 of them, congressmen talking about these whistleblowers. Out of 10 to 12 of them had, 10 out of 12 of them had concerns about what were murders in the past, people going missing in their workplace. Major General Neil McCaslin has missing over 2 weeks. Representative Eric Burleson, that's who was talking there, recently revealed he has been warned his life may be in danger. So yes, we have thugs in our government, criminals, murderers in our own government that will kill our own people to keep this quiet. Don't believe me. Don't believe anything I tell you. I've been hearing this for about 40 years about this. For anybody, these guys in Congress and stuff. I've heard about Men in Black. I've heard about other ways, other people and stuff that have ended up dead. Don't take my word for it.
Of the 40 people we did interview,
investigation. And there are nuclear people, nuclear physicists, etc., and everything that gone missing. The nuclear program. So there's a lot going on with people just going conveniently missing, including these people in the nuclear program. If anybody has anything they want to say, I do this also so that people could chat on here as well. That's the reason why I do it live, because I want to hear from the people what they've been through, if they've had UFO experiences. Me, I have ETs outside, right outside that. You know, I've done live streams and stuff like that, though they don't like me on camera much, but you know, I like to get more people to see them around here. But let us see. There has to be more than that was last month. Let's see. I can't spell this right. Let me go around here. They're not conspiracy theories, they're real. Let's see. It's 2 weeks ago, 2 years ago. Well, YouTube does not keep up. I know there's more recent than this. Time traveling UFOs, that's something. I remember that. There's more, but YouTube is not giving me the right videos. On here, they're go here. See, 8
News now at 11. A secret Pentagon program that studied UFO encounters ended back in 2012, but the senator who sponsored it thinks it should be revived.
Former Nevada Senator Harry Reid admitted his involvement with the UFO project last year. Now the 8 News Now I-team has found a document from 2009 in which Reid made the case for protecting and expanding the project.
The I-team's George Knapp has our story.
George Knapp.
The U.S. Navy pilots who encountered tic-tac-shaped objects off the coast of California in 2004 were flummoxed by the astounding technology of the unknown intruders. So were the pilots who encountered the so-called gimbal UFO in 2015 off the coast of Florida, as were pilots and sailors in dozens of similar incidents. These kinds of cases inspired Senator Harry Reid in 2007 to initiate a secret military study of UFO encounters. Reid publicly acknowledged the study last December.
George, I think these studies are so loaded with information.
Yeah, he's dead now. Yeah.
The reason I say that is that we learned a lot.
Reacting to news stories about the now canceled study called ATIP, Pentagon spokesperson said the study didn't learn much. But that's not how Reid described the program in this 2009 letter to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. The letter is not classified, but a footnote says it is exempt from disclosure under FOIA. Only 14 people were copied, all of them with security clearances. In the letter, Reid said the DIA study to that point had focused on, quote, advanced aerospace threats and disruptive aerospace technologies, that the ATIP study was already a success, and that exotic technologies could be catastrophic if ever used by our adversaries. Lou Elizondo, who was in charge of ATIP until he left the Pentagon last year, was surprised we had a copy of the letter, but acknowledged it is legit.
Yes, I have read that letter. I think that letter portrays a very compelling picture to the Department of Defense that the preliminary results of the ATIP program were warranting an increase in the protection of that information.
Although Elizondo was instrumental in getting the release of 3 Pentagon UFO videos, the files and reports generated by the ATIP study have not been made public, and he's not authorized to spill the secrets. Elizondo now works with To the Stars Academy in California. One of his colleagues, physicist and longtime CIA consultant Dr. Hal Puthoff, recently told a science group in Las Vegas the existence of the formal study allowed reluctant witnesses to step forward.
And members living in the Department of Defense and intelligence community officials have come forward to talk about the reality of this phenomenon and the fact that there were programs going on.
Elizondo declines to name names, but says there's no question ATIP produced valuable intelligence.
Absolutely was successful. It was absolutely successful. That is undeniable, to the point where that point was raised to senior levels of the Department of Defense.
So why would Pentagon spokespersons claim the study produced little?
The right hand doesn't always know what the left hand's doing. They try. I don't think it's deliberate or on purpose. I don't think it's a misinformation campaign.
Senator Reid told us he hopes some of his former colleagues in Congress are paying attention and that they'll authorize a resumption or expansion of the study. George Knapp, 8 News Now.
Senator Reid, who is recovering from cancer surgery, wrote the letter for the purpose of asking that the UFO study be protected as a special access program. Now, we do have additional resources on our website, including links to a new interview with the Navy pilot who encountered the Tic Tac UFO.
We're watching 8 News Now at 11.
Officially, the U.S. government...
Witnesses and thousands of pages of documents suggest someone is monitoring our nukes. The Department of Energy admits that...
Yeah, flight is a... Yeah, this is old stuff. Oh, this is this as well. Underneath the church. That's the Catholic Church, yeah. You got proof of ETs.
G'day and welcome back to Reality Check. I'm your host, Ross Coulthart, and it's my great pleasure today to welcome to Reality Check, I think probably one of the most illustrious commentators.
Shout out News Nation, Ross Coulthart here. This, of course, I have to say it's for legal reasons. and everything, fair use and everything, and putting in my own experiences and stuff like that with this. Just have to put that out there.
Data historians on the whole subject of UAPs, Richard Dolan. Richard is a renowned historian and leading authority on the UFO phenomenon, particularly its intersections with national security and government secrecy. He was born and raised in the US. He earned a master's degree in history from the University of Rochester, where his studies on Cold War diplomacy sparked a deep fascination with unexplained anomalous phenomena and official cover-ups. Initially, he pursued a career in academia and journalism, and then he shifted
That's great. That's great. It really is. But hold on. Catalina, I talked about a long time ago. I heard about this when I was a little kid, 40 plus years ago, about Catalina having underwater base and stuff, like UFOs around there and stuff like that. I saw on Discovery, where people can see this asset, hopefully it's still there, from one of the Discovery channels that I saw for this one paranormal investigative team. Once Catalina, Luna Elizondo was there, you know, showing something around, and they did their own nightly thing, and they ran into some UFOs there. Catalina is a hot spot, and if you want to see under objects come and go, you got Catalina, you got Baja California, off the coast of Southern California. You got areas also off the coast of Northern California, and of course, you know, from Space Command Vandenberg Air Force Base, the ocean off there. You got Hawaii. There's a lot of places. You got Puerto Rico. Lots of many different places.
Focus in the early 2000s to full-time UFO research after uncovering declassified documents that revealed extensive government involvement in suppressing UFO reports. Richard's rigorous, evidence-based approach has distinguished him as a scholar in a field often dismissed by mainstream institutions, earning him a reputation as a meticulous chronicler of the modern UFO era. His seminal contributions to the genre include his 2-volume series, UFOs and the National Security State. The first chronicled sightings and cover-ups from 1941 to 1973, and the second extended through to 1991. And he drew on thousands of primary sources to argue for a systematic US government program of concealment. He also co-authored with my good mate and former Need to Know colleague Bryce Zabel, AD After Disclosure, the People's Guide to Life After Contact. And he explored in that the societal implications of potential extraterrestrial NHI revelation. As co-founder of Richard Dolan Press, he continues to publish influential works, including his 2025 release, A History of USOs, Unidentified Submerged Objects, delving into underwater UFO encounters. Richard, it's a great...
Before I get into that, I also wanted to address this Neuralink thing, how stupid it is, because we all, with the UFOs, there is, you know, and contact with extraterrestrials, is that if we, you know, got more to know each other and stuff like that, we all have psychic and telepathic abilities. That's including, we have a way to know all these different languages because of these abilities that we don't fully know how to use. And putting that stuff in your brain, what kind of stuff are they spying on in your head? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I'd have that. It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, I know myself, because I've been able to do some remote viewing before and some psychic stuff as well. And there's a way for all of us to be able to do these things. It's just, that keeps on popping out. And that's something I promised to address and everything. It's just ridiculous what people might put in their heads with that. But
pleasure to have you here. Welcome to Reality Check.
Hello, Richard.
Thank you so much,
How
Ross.
you doing?
Very, very nice to be here with you.
So let's start with the one thing that leapt out at me in your book. I've been taking a very close interest in Catalina Island, just off the coast of Los Angeles. And it strikes me that all through your first volume in your USO history, Catalina Island is clearly a UAP hotspot.
UFO.
What's going on?
It's a very good question. When I review all of the many USO accounts that I've been going through for what is going to be a 3-volume history on that. There are a number of places that you can call hotspots. One of them is the area in Southern California near Catalina Island for sure, the Channel Islands in general. What is going on there? That's the question. What I can definitely say to you is that there is an inordinate number of truly fascinating UAP and USO cases in that area. Not all of them are USOs in the sense that they're all seen interacting with the water, but many of them are. And many others are just low over the water, interacting with that region in some way or another.
If people could go, I believe that's on at the HBO Max. If you get that, there's a paranormal investigations thing that these people did. She used to be on G4 TV, and she and this other guy did a night thing off of Catalina, and they did where there was a hidden place where these UFOs were coming in and out of, and a UFO happened to bump one of their things that was underwater and just knock it out. And people, if it's something worth getting some of that Discovery, because you get Discovery channels free with HBO Max, so that makes it worth it. I don't know if they still have that series going. I've ever seen that a few years ago. So
there's a lot of people living in that area. This is essentially the Los Angeles area, and it should not surprise us that a large number of people will have interactions with something strange out there. But this is really unusual. The cases there are truly astonishing and much more than you would expect if it were just spread out generally. So, one thing I wonder is what kind of military, if any, connection is there. Catalina Island is not far from the area where, of course, the USS Nimitz had its encounter with the famous Tic Tac UFO. We all know about that. Right. And there are a number of other U.S. Navy operations going on down there by San Diego and all across the California coastline, in fact. So that's a factor that I often wonder, how does that fit into all of this? And I don't know if we have the full answer, but I can definitely say with confidence that there is a definite strangeness going on with that area, without a doubt. And you indicated you'd gone through my first volume of USO history. That goes up to the end of 1969. So that's actually quite a way back. And there are some very good cases dealing with the region around Catalina Island. But unquestionably, it shoots up during the 1970s and 80s. And that is a period that I'm about to publish that second volume, which covers those 2 decades very soon. So very soon. And so I think you and others will be able to see quite a few more such cases there.
Let's go through what people have been seeing and reporting from around Catalina Island. Firstly, for those of our audience that don't know where we're talking about, it's an island that's about 22 miles off the coast of Los Angeles in the Santa Catalina Channel. And as Richard has said, it's a UFO hotspot, long been known to be a UFO hotspot because of the clustering of reported sightings in that area, spanning over way back 7 decades. And I was just looking in the history, like as far back as July 47, there were 3 Army Air Force veterans and an aerial photographer, Bob Jung, who reported 6 disc-shaped objects over Avalon on Catalina Island. And Bob actually captured a photograph showing one near a streamer's mast. And it keeps on going because in 1966 there was a US Navy photographer, Lee Hansen, who filmed a metallic football-shaped disc. He reckoned it was 20 to 30 meters across, and he was in a Bell helicopter traveling at about 170 miles an hour. But the object was moving with no visible propulsion, and the footage, taken on a very clear day, remains unexplained. It's considered one of the most credible early cases. Is it possible, Richard, that there's a base of non-human intelligences that's located itself somewhere underwater?
I definitely think it's possible, yes, Ross, I do. I can't say that we can prove it. What's strange to me is that whole region is so densely operated. You know, there's so much U.S.
I think if there's a way that supposed to go out there and be, because I have UFOs I can communicate with out here. I think that we could do that. I just don't have money. I live in Canada, but I'm dead sure. I'm dead sure we could get proof. I know we could get proof. This one group that was, on this paranormal series, from Discovery. Again, get this through HBO Max, is on Discovery and stuff, and it's mind blowing. But yes, this stuff is there. It's there.
Navy and just U.S. commercial activity in that area. One would think, or I would tend to think, that it would be a crazy place to put an alien base. Got all these people around.
It's perfect.
Then, you think about a few other things. Once you get even more than a few hundred feet below the surface of any body of water, it could conceivably be difficult to detect what is going on there. I mean, most of our activity is not, far away from the surface. Even a Navy submarine is going to stay within a few hundred feet of the surface for the most part. So on that basis, you could hypothesize that a deeper presence is possible. And that is what I wonder. There are a few places on the planet where it seems to me that you've got a real potential for a non-human base. And I do think that Catalina Island or somewhere around that is a real possibility. Not impossible.
The reason I ask that, Richard, is because it's such a common feature of these sightings that are aerial sightings, that the residents and visitors often see orbs or lights or solid-looking objects going what we call transmedium, that they go from air to water or water to air. Is this something you've picked up in your research?
Absolutely.
Well, this is
what struck me is
this is
almost shocking.
Is that this is with UFOs that I see outside, is that sometimes they put out a signal. It's like Morse code, and I believe this is how humans learned Morse code. With light and other things, like the Navy used to and everything, with light and the Romans used to. I believe we got this from ETs and everything, because sometimes when they gone through Catalina, I've seen it on video. I've seen UFOs where they will blink. I've seen it out here with drones. That UFOs where they made themselves look like drones as well, and they communicate back and forth and stuff like that. And it's like, I know what you're doing. It's like I saw it with another object over there, and it's just. I had to say that.
in fact, was the number of cases that I found in which people explicitly saw an object emerging from a body of water and then just zipping away in the atmosphere. To me, that's the most extraordinary thing that I could imagine, an object emerging from the water and then just departing. It's one thing to see an object on a controlled descent into the ocean, and those are often reported as well. But you could perhaps, in theory, if it's a distant sighting, hypothesize maybe something crashed or something fell into the water, even though many of those do not seem like that at all. They seem very controlled. But when an object's emerging from a body of water and then going on a controlled flight elsewhere, I mean, I don't know how one could explain that in any conventional way. And there are many of these, many such cases of these.
I've cherry-picked some of my favourites from your book, and one of my favourites was a game fisherman by the name of George Heiner in 1968. And it's quite an extraordinary sighting. He's looking through binoculars on a clear blue sky day, and he sees a dome-like object, huge dome-like object, emerge from the sea. He thinks it's going to take off, but as he watches, you've described it in the book, it has some kind of parachute-like structure underneath it, and then it plops down into the ocean. But what really struck me is a lot of these sightings, when people describe them going from air to water or water to air, transmedium, you don't see the gigantic splash that you would expect to see. It's almost like it's displacing the water.
It is in a way, like I've told people before, with some of these objects, is that they have like an atmosphere bubble around them. And if people have seen this video, I did this a long time ago. But I don't know if people see this video from Department of Defense where they released where a UFO took a missile, and around it, the missile just went boom. That's because there's like not just a shield, but it's like an antimatter type thing. And this is how they could go through space as well and be protected from hitting even. I've heard of stories of UFOs hitting a train, a locomotive, or a truck, or whatever. I've heard all kinds of stuff and everything, and hit an airplane. And they just keep on going. They have this field around them, a slipstream in a way that I call it. And they could just keep on going through water, they could go through space, and they're not, if they hit the asteroid or whatever, it's not going to be that big a deal. So much as if our jet fighters, if our fighter planes do, it's totally different. It displaces that, and with water, it's like a slip. There's like already a pipe thing under there, and it just goes right under it, and it's a field around these craft. The ones that I see out here, they're going like in and out time. What they do is that they're able to make themselves invisible. I shouldn't talk too much because I don't want the government. Anyways, let's go.
Water.
Frequently. That is frequently the case. Sometimes there is a splash, but a lot of times there isn't. And it's
Right.
I don't always know how one could even predict that, because they don't often look radically different. But it's true. There are many cases where these objects enter water, no splash. It's one theory is that they are able to create a kind of cavitation around themselves as they enter the water with a electromagnetic field of some sort.
It's much more.
This is beyond my scientific expertise. I don't want to theorize too much, but I think that a number of very intelligent analysts have theorized that these craft can create a field essentially around themselves that can allow them also to move much faster under the water as well. I think it's the same type of effect. They create a cavitation around themselves, or like a hollowed out area, and it allows them to move through the water much faster. And that same effect allows them to emerge or enter a body of water without disturbing it. in a significant way.
That's a great segue, actually, to what I wanted to ask you about specifically relating to submarines. There's quite a few submariners from Australia and particularly from the US submarine fleet who, I think there's an ethos there of secrecy, so they won't go on camera. But they've told me privately how many times when they've been on the sub, the sub's gone to general quarters, it's gone to battle stations, and there's an object moving in the water that's clearly showing up on the sonar as a gigantic metallic object, and it's moving at ridiculous speed. I mean, it's displacing the water at speeds that would defy our terrestrial technology. In some cases, they're talking about moving faster than the speed of sound in air, in water.
I've come across some claims and testimony.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I get excited. I could get high talking about some of this stuff, but it's like what they're able to do is bend space-time. These guys are like hundreds of thousands of years ahead of us in a lot of ways. So they've had time to develop this stuff, and some of the stuff they've had automatically, always had this stuff. So to them, this is usual stuff. And so they could just go through our matter just like it's air, just like there's nothing there. Same with, you look at, what's it called? Oh my God. I forgot, but I did this with cross-section, stuff like that. How they're able to just displace everything that,
to that effect as well, Ross.
And everything else.
Typically, the fast speed that, like, I will hear or read could be several hundred knots, which is very fast. That's not faster than the speed of sound. But I've encountered at least one or two such cases where a description might even match that, faster than the speed of sound. We're talking, more than 600-700 miles per hour. Absurdly fast. Under the water, it seems impossible. And yet, some of these accounts have come out from U.S. and also, importantly, many old Soviet Navy encounters described as it's not simply an American or English-speaking phenomenon. This has been reported among also a lot of Russian Navy veterans as well.
Yeah, I thought you did some great work on that, and you borrowed, I think, from two former submariners who were Soviet-era submariners, who clearly took an issue with the fact that they were seeing strange, anomalous objects during their service, and decided to investigate them in civilian life. I've forgotten their names. You can probably remember.
Vladimir Ajaja, who recently died. He was a senior Soviet, Russian UFO, USO student, and someone else who's alive is Evgeny Litvinov. They're both former Soviet officers of the Navy. Litvinov, I think, was a submarine commander or some high rank, and then they just took this research. They wrote a book on USOs in Russian, which I was able to get a digital copy, and then I just did my own machine translation of it and went through that thing in a lot of detail. So they had a lot of very valuable...
Before Putin took over Russia and everything, and one reason why he did, with communism and everything, is because our CIA wanted Putin back with the military-industrial complex and everything. They wanted him back as well, and before that, when the wall came down and everything, the Russians were letting out all their state secrets on UFOs, USOs, all this other stuff, and that the Americans, the CIA and intelligence community, and these contractors do not want out there. They do not want this stuff out there. This stuff was out. And I had a hold of some stuff. I think I lost some of the stuff when I lost my house and everything and was homeless for a bit. But they had a lot. They had all these secrets out there, from generals, on down to they had their own Project Blue Book and stuff like that they had, and it's just awesome what they had.
Information. Sure.
And so they're as puzzled by the phenomenon on the Soviet side and presumably on the Russian side as we are.
Absolutely, and the number of cases is very astonishing. There's a lot. The one thing about the old Soviet cases is that during the 1950s and 60s and the 70s, it was very difficult to talk about this subject in a public venue within the Soviet Union. It was a very repressive atmosphere. So what we find is that a lot of them circulated privately through the years. And so when they finally were being published in the 1990s, there's a lot of vagueness in terms of dates and exact locations. It's understandable, though. It's just the way it was. And my attitude is, look, I'm taking these cases as they are, with the understanding that we're probably getting some details wrong, or we're not getting certain details. But I do think that these are, they're true accounts in the sense that the researchers there did a lot of meticulous work on them, and I think we owe it to ourselves to look at those cases seriously.
Right.
I just wanted to return briefly to that area of Catalina Island, just off the Los Angeles coast, because I suspect we need to discuss the possibility of a prosaic explanation. You touched briefly on the possibility that it might be US military activity, and it is close to a naval air station called Point Mugu, which does do military testing on drones, missiles, and experimental aircraft. In your opinion, Richard, do you think that US secret military testing could explain all of the phenomena that's been witnessed in and around and under the waters of Catalina Island?
Yeah, my short answer is I'm skeptical overall that is the answer. There is one candidate, especially in the book that I'm about to release, covering the 1970s and 80s, where we know of active NATO deception in the Baltic Seas off the coast of Sweden in the 1980s. This actually was really true. So you had Swedish forces then reportedly trapping some kind of mystery object, or tracking the mystery objects for a number of years. We know that there was a U.S.-run deception campaign during that era. We've had admissions from senior U.S. officials during the Reagan era about this. And they were actually trying to influence Swedish, and they successfully influenced Swedish politics to blame this on the Soviets at the time and to get the Swedish government to kind of come closer to NATO. That's real. But even that does not fully explain many of the encounters that I've studied in that region. Some of them are just too bizarre.
So just explain that, just before you jump on from that, Richard. So you've got the US deliberately trying to suggest that it was Soviet activity when, from what you're telling me, they're not sure that it was at all. In fact, the evidence pointed to the contrary. What conclusion?
He's probably to say, but this is how they do counterintelligence. This is how you keep your allies closer to you, is that you invent a story, you tell the Swedish, you tell the Norwegians, whomever, you say, hey, these are the Russians. You need us to protect you. Stay with us. Stay aligned with us. We'll help you. We'll put in stuff in your country, assets, military assets, or whatever, radar stations, stuff like that, so we can track them. It's perfect.
Conclusion do you reach from the fact that the US is clearly trying to disinform and mislead people and the government as to what the real cause was of that phenomena? Why would they want to mislead the Swedes and the general public about what that phenomena is?
During the 1980s, the United States was unhappy with the fact that Sweden was as neutral as they were in the overall Cold War phenomenon. So they wanted to bring Sweden closer to the U.S. And so William Casey, director of the CIA, Caspar Weinberger, who was over at DOD, conceived of a strategy to engage in electronic deception against the Swedes. And we do not know all of the technical aspects of this campaign, but we know it happened, by which they wanted to convince the Swedes that Soviet submarines were violating Swedish waters. Now, the fact is that Soviet submarines sometimes did violate Swedish waters. This wasn't unusual. The U.S. did it as well to other nations. So that kind of business was happening. The real question is, could American technology and deception account for cases of transmedium, silent, very large craft that were sometimes seen not just by the Swedes, but by the Russians and by other people as well. We're talking sometimes hours-long, repeated submerge and emerge types of cases that occurred in many waters around the world during this period, sometimes in great public view. And the extreme speeds and depths that turned up that we discussed, I mean, of hundreds of knots, these were not things that anyone can acknowledge the Americans were doing. So the bottom line to me is that the U.S. deception did exist, especially in the Baltic theater, but many of these USO observables in my catalog, silent lift from water to air, cruise ship scale objects, no wake, instant submergence, these do not match any disclosed U.S. or Soviet platforms of that era. So I think it's very difficult to consider, and particularly with Catalina Island, where we're not in contested waters, these are U.S. waters, to describe some of the things that people were seeing there, which were quite extraordinary. We could talk about a couple of the cases if you like, that are quite remarkable and just tough to explain away.
What are some of the cases?
I can't see these as black budget projects.
What are some of your favorite Catalina cases?
One that always struck me from 1982, I think it was June of 82. You have a family, this is not a military case, you have a family that would frequently they have a 40-plus foot Gulf Star boat to Catalina. So you have dad, who was former Navy, you have the mom, you have, I think, 2 kids in their early teens type of thing. So they are on their way to Catalina on this one time, and they're watching below the ship this large yellow object moving under the water about up to 50 feet below them at about 20 knots. That's a pretty good speed. And it's going back and forth below them. It's rocking their boat as it's crisscrossing them for about 5 minutes. This was not a marine
those are not
animal.
so friendly.
They were certain of this. The father, who was Navy, said, "I've never seen nothing like this ever." Mom felt so threatened, she just said, "I'm going below deck." He watched this for about 5 minutes, could not identify it. It made him very anxious and nervous. They felt
they didn't want you there. That's why.
I'm trying to think, did they feel heat coming up from them? They may have. I remembering this from going from memory, but that was it. They never sailed again after that either, which is one of these things. Or I'll mention one more. There was this is a missing time case, and I don't recall the year, but it's from the 70s or 80s. Guy is traveling alone to Catalina. He misses the harbor. He's a little bit east of the harbor, and he's going up the coast of Catalina, and he's 2 hours missing time from where he was to when he finally landed, and he was not able.
Can you explain missing time to our audience, Richard? Some people might not understand what you mean.
Yeah, so he was supposed to arrive at, I think, 10 o'clock, and he arrived at midnight, and he had no idea why. He was not able to account for about 2 hours of his time.
Sounds like abduction.
Now, in the UAP or UFO history, those of us who study cases of missing time, these are interesting because, well, sometimes they are linked to being taken or abductions.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if that's what happened to this man. He was taken for a couple of hours and then just returned.
One thing that really struck me about your book, Richard, your first volume in the series, is you've actually done what most of us dare not do, which is you ventured into statistical analysis. And I was really struck by the fact that in your analysis, you mentioned that missing time cases were reported 17 times. And sightings of beings, entities, were reported 23 times involving USOs. There were 3 cases involving both combined missing time and.
Yeah, these beings are not the ones that I see out here. These ones are friendly. Those ones do not want you there and stuff like that. They don't do things. So, like I said, there's good and bad ETs. And then there's some I call juvenile delinquents. that do bad things. I say that jokingly, though what happens to people is no joke with alien abduction. But, sometimes, some of the stuff that they do, it's like you wonder if they're from another, galaxy. It's like a group of juvenile delinquents get together and say, hey, let's play with the humans. Let's mess with them a little bit. Let's do it. It's like the parents are like, where'd the kids go? I don't know. They're over here messing with us.
Sightings of beings accounted for 5.5% of all USO cases.
That's correct.
It's fascinating. I mean, why missing do, which is you ventured into statistical analysis. And I was really struck by the fact that in your analysis, you mentioned that missing time cases were reported 17 times. And sightings of beings, entities, were reported 23 times involving USOs. There were 3 cases involving both. Combined missing time and sightings of beings accounted for 5.5% of all USO cases.
That's correct.
It's fascinating. I mean, why missing time, do you think? Do you think it's a consequence of the technology that perhaps they're using?
Yes, I do. I think, and that 5%, that's of all of roughly 700 cases that I've collected for the 3 volumes, the collected volumes of this study. And it's a minority. It's 1 out of 20, but it's significant enough that I think we need to look at this. The missing time to me tells me, or indicates to me, I should say, that at least in a few of these instances, they are interested in us just as they are in cases where they're sighted over land or in someone's home, where someone is taken. They do seem sometimes to be, this is potentially the case, on the water as well at times, without a doubt. I think that's true.
This is the fascinating thing in your book, and in your series of books, no doubt, the indication that whatever it is, do you agree it's...
This is what I'm getting. A lot of these people, they come there to visit. Sometimes this stuff happens. What I'm getting is that this is an opportunity thing. What they're doing with some of these people. Also, they can tag them, put stuff in, behind their eye or whatever, and use them later. I just think it's a target of opportunity. Some of these, but it depends by the case.
Intelligent, and it's probably not human. And the second part of my question is, do you think it's conducting reconnaissance on us? It seems to be watching us, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I would say the thing that stands out when I do my research on this is that we are outmatched by them, not just technologically, but probably intellectually and conceptually. But in terms of their behavior, I would say my working model, I try to study their behavior as objectively as I can. To me, it looks like there's a long-term strategic presence that they have. We're talking across centuries of global testimony. The same pattern emerges. These transmedium craft can operate in oceans as if our waters are an established domain for them. I think their behavior shows continuity and purpose rather than random visitation. I don't think there's anything random about what they do.
Yeah, there isn't. They've had that there for a long time. And I don't know how many tens of thousands of years in some of these cases or whatever, for some bases. But like I said, these groups of ETs are different from the ones that I know around me and everything. Some can be very evil and some are good and everything. And these ones sometimes don't want you there. And sometimes they'll use you as an opportunity to do what they want. We're just like cattle in a way.
And I think the patterns suggest a long-term presence. Either this is a sustained observation program or maybe even a permanent residency beneath the seas. I will just add, there's a great operational discipline and silence about them. They interact without communication. They will enter restricted zones. They will approach military assets. They will disable.
I have to sort of correct it because I've seen some of the video right there. When they do come around in space, I've seen where they'll flash their light a bit, and they're doing it that way. So the base, now me, sometimes they can communicate with me telepathically or psychically as well. And it's like you just know that they are out there, whether it's space or right in front of you. You know that they're there, and there's different ways to communicate. It's not the way that we know it so much, but there are different ways of doing it. But I see that blink their lights. And the Navy, the Romans have used this as well. Morse code type things, where they blink and stuff, and then they'll get the okay to come on down, or they won't, or else they'll be waved off somewhere else. I see this, so that's just
systems when they want to, it seems, and they will depart silently. So the silence is itself, to me, a policy. It strikes me as a deliberate refusal to engage. There's a restraint there, but it's one that implies control, not fear. And I think they seem to follow strict protocols, like basically observe, test, record, and then withdraw. That's what it looks like. There's so many of these military cases. I'm sorry, Ross, go on.
I was going to say, isn't that pretty sinister? Isn't it sinister, the idea that something, I mean, the military call it ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, something highly advanced, highly intelligent, you agree, probably not human, is conducting ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance on us, using the oceans as a stealthy platform from where to operate.
Well, think of it this way. Like, let's assume, which I do, that there's been at least a reasonably long-term presence. And I don't know that I agree with everyone who says reflexively, oh, well, they've been here forever. I do think there's a likelihood that we've been observed for a long time. I don't know how intense that observation was in earlier years. I do believe that once we started becoming technologically a little more capable and a little more interesting, particularly in the last few centuries, I suspect that triggered a heightened level of observation by them. But just look at our history through the 20th century alone, from the year 1900 until today. Our first practical submarine was launched in the year 1900. We were just starting to really be able to get into the waters in anything like resembling sophistication. And so in the beginning of the 20th century, if they were there, they wouldn't really have much to worry about in terms of us. But you think about how rapid and dramatic our technological transformation in the 20th century was. It's extraordinary. And so from their point of view, they would have to adapt as well to us becoming, putting in like sonar arrays into the ocean after World War II, having aircraft carriers that suddenly could traverse the oceans with nuclear-powered engines, nuclear submarines that could stay under the water forever, starting in the 1950s. So we were becoming much more capable, and of course with advances in our weapon systems and all of these things. So if you're them, it seems to me you would need to continually check on these humans and find out what are they able to do now. Are we able to, what do they see when they're observing? And so I think when I look at the behaviors, particularly of military encounters, whether US or Soviet military, the patterns are similar. They will come in, they will disable certain communication systems, certain data collection systems, whether radar goes off. Sometimes an entire ship's engine will stop. It's extraordinary. US and Soviet cases have reported this. But they will come in and just as our data collection becomes like, would be at its best, like when they're at their closest, they shut us down. So it's as if it's a policy of data denial, it seems to me. They will...
This also goes back to us downing extraterrestrial craft. Like I said, it seems like we're targeting a lot of friendly ET craft. Why aren't we going after these guys? There's a reason. They could also shut us down, and That's one thing. If we start something with them, they can overwhelm us with what they have and stuff. So I mean, that's something I don't like, is how the friendly ones that I know of, they're scared of being out here more and more with this. So it's like,
and it seems to me, or at least I'm theorizing, that they are, and essentially calibrating themselves against us. What can these humans do? What do we need to deal with now? And once they get that information, they're done and they take off, and our systems come back online. That's what it looks like.
By its very nature a threat, Richard? I mean, something that's surveilling us without telling us what it's about is a threat, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Lou Elizondo often says it's a potential threat. I think the word potential goes along with threat. Is it an actual threat? I haven't seen too many instances in which they're overtly attacking. This is important to keep in mind. Now, there are cases where people have reported severe injuries and even death from time to time in interacting with these phenomena. In the late 1970s near Colares, Brazil, of course, famously, there were a number of cases where civilians were genuinely attacked by these objects, and some of them were USOs. There's a lot of water there.
I was going to say, actually, because that did seem to have a water connection, didn't it? Because
yes,
the Brazilian military investigation did suggest that some of those orbs came from water.
Absolutely, yes, that's right. And I don't think there's any reason to doubt that. Overall, however, when you look at the military encounters, they're not actually attacking. They're not causing damage. They're not killing people. So there's a line that it seems to me that they don't go over. So they are engaging themselves with our military, and they do it fearlessly. I mean, total confidence in the way that they're doing it. So that it's if they know they've got this. But they're not, generally speaking, and this really has to be understood, engaging in overt hostility, at least that I can see, as a policy. So there is that level of restraint. So threat, yeah, potential, absolutely. And if you're a military person, if you're an intelligence person, this is your job to recognize this as a potential threat. I don't think we should downplay that. But I also think the other side of it has to be recognized, that it's not necessarily a case where they're actively engaging in hostilities. I can't say that I can conclude that.
When you say they, Richard, one of the things I really admire about you is you are the guy who termed the term breakaway civilization. So there are multiple explanations that are possible here for whatever this phenomenon under the ocean is, and indeed for what the UAP phenomenon represents. One is, and you've touched on this here, the possibility of a crypto-terrestrial civilization, a civilization that's living congruently with us, which is possibly not human, but has essentially elected to keep itself separate from humanity. The other is the outright extraterrestrial or NHI, non-human intelligence explanation, which is a broad brush, but it's perhaps best described as an advanced species from somewhere else. And the other is a breakaway civilization, your use of the term to essentially describe something that, particularly since World War II, there's been a highly elite control group that essentially has been manipulating human knowledge of the UAP issue and possibly creating its own highly advanced civilization separately from us.
I don't know, this is crazy, but in a way that just came in my head. What makes you think that they're from somewhere else? Like we're the only sentients here. Sorry I put you guys to sleep for a second. Sorry guys. Sorry anybody watching.
Sounds cuckoo, but where do you fall on all of this? What are we talking about when we say they?
They're alive. They're good.
Glad you asked that. Yeah, the idea of a breakaway civilization, I did develop that around 2007, 2008, 2009, and then wrote about it. And it was based on the idea that you could, in theory, have a classified group that has its own science, that is compartmented away from the rest of the world, that has, therefore, its own that classifies the science and preventing the rest of the world from looking into it as well, which would allow them to have breakthroughs in maybe propulsion or maybe the ability to go off world, which would in turn allow them to have a different cosmology and a different understanding of the world. They may have interactions with these other intelligences that the rest of us lack. And so the combined effect would be they would essentially be a separate civilization, or one that is broken away from our own to some extent. That doesn't mean that they all live on Mars or live on the moon. They go home to their families like you and me, but they're within a deeply classified world. And that's one theory. And I do believe that there's truth to this. How far it goes, I can't even to this day say that I know how far it goes. Are they actually able to go off world? Are they actually able to are they the cause of what we call the UFO phenomenon? Well, I don't think.
This is me, all right? My experiences with UFOs, different types, and contact with them. Right here, there's like a transit area of different types of UFOs as well. And of course, some of them are from other galaxies and other places. Some could be from a different time as well. Some are living. Some of these things are living, actual living and stuff. Some could be AI, artificial intelligence, something that is beyond our understanding of artificial intelligence. Some are flesh intelligence, some are not. And stuff. It's like it's all the above, different things. Whether they're from a different time and place, that's different. Warping reality and stuff like that. They could warp reality. I see them warp reality all the time out here. It's fucking awesome. This stuff, but
so I don't think that that's the primary cause of it. I think that they're essentially reactive to the primary phenomenon, which is not human. This is my belief. Now, where are they from? Are they from another world?
The ghetto.
To me, that remains the most problem-free explanation that I can think of. Another planet that has the ability to support life as Earth does. I must assume those exist. The primary difficulty for them to get here, of course, is from our science, is the distance. We don't know how to do it, but I don't think we should therefore assume that no one else has figured this out. If you can solve the distance problem, you've basically solved everything.
There is a way. It's easy.
Relating to the UFO phenomenon. If you can solve that, you can solve everything else.
Yeah,
so I think
they solve that. They're able to bend space-time on itself. They're able to reverse it, polarity, and everything else. They flip everything on itself, and they can just go through all that stuff and everything. I don't need to understand all of it, but some stuff I used to get a little high on and stuff like that, but like quantum mechanics, quantum theory, mechanics, stuff like that. But they're just able to do all that stuff, and when you just know stuff, it's like it doesn't really matter how. It just is. You're just able to do it. They go in and out of time, space, and all this other stuff. It's like it's meant to be manipulated, or it just is, and everything. So
ultimately, I look at them as extraterrestrial, but I suspect that they've made a permanent, or let's say semi-permanent,
some are not extraterrestrial,
set of bases here on Earth. Not all of them are necessarily under the water. I think some of them can be underground within mountains. I think there's good reason to think that, but under the oceans, if you've got the ability to come here from elsewhere, we might hypothesize they have the ability to have access to immense amounts of energy generation and the ability to create a secure underground facility or underwater facility. I think that's what they've done. And I also think that just based on their behavior and my own speculations about what they might be, admittedly it's speculation, but I think that they have no desire to have a general communication with us. I think that they're here for their purposes.
This is the thing, at least with these ETs, they don't give a shit about us unless we're a target of opportunity to do what they want with us and everything, just to fool around with us like little toys or whatever. Some of them don't. This is another thing about UFO secrecy. The ETs that we're working with right now, they don't want it to be known. They don't care. They don't want to have anything to do with humans unless it's to do what they want with us in some dirty way or whatever. Alright? That's just the facts. There are some ETs that I know out there, and there's other ones that want us to go to have an awakening, that want us to evolve, that want us to be able to develop psychic, telepathic, psionic abilities, and be something more than human, because we're not just human, we can be something more than that. And some ETs just don't even like us, don't want to have anything to do with us. It's like, leave us the F alone, don't come in our yard, don't come in our backyard, stay off my porch, stay off my porch, okay? Get out of here, and, stuff like that. So it's just like I said, ETs can be just like humans. They're no better, no worse. They're very much just like us, different types. So
we're both volatile and fragile at the same time as a civilization. Hard to predict how open contact with our world would actually go down. It's one thing to have disclosure, but actually open contact is a level of communication that I suspect they've decided we're not ready for, and I suspect we're probably not ready for open contact as well.
Actually,
so you think there's something like a Star Trek Prime Directive operating? They're under edict not to interfere in this primitive ape-like civilization.
I wish you wouldn't say that, because some of us, like I said, I've had videos of contact I've had with them. They're ready. People have to be ready as well. And if you could come out here, I'd love to have it. Maybe they'll show themselves well. I mean, the only way that I know that's real is that I have to get some stuff on camera. Otherwise, I just think I'd be insane. Anybody else could say that. But yeah, we're ready. It's just you have to open your mind. You have to open your spirit to the universe, and everything. So, it'll happen. It will happen.
I know it sounds like I'm just copying from what we find on TV, but actually, I will say this: if there is one law that I would like to hope that an extraterrestrial civilization has, it would be a non-intervention directive, because I personally cannot think of anything more damaging to an active, growing culture than to impose yourself over it and to kind of change it. There may be a lot of life in this universe, I suspect there is, but intelligent life that is able to engage in abstract thought and mathematics and science and philosophy, I don't think those come along quite all the time. And I suspect that we, in our own unstable, violent, territorial way, are still unique enough that to mess with it, I think would be hopefully considered a real crime. We've got our problems we have to work out. And also, I don't think that I don't think that they would be able to save us anyway. I mean, how could they do that? If we were to go back in time and in 1 million years and encounter...
I hate to do this, but I do watch Dragon Ball. And some of the stuff that happens with Dragon Ball has to do, there are parallels with this about how gods are supposed to stay out of our affairs as much as possible and to end civilizations that will go nowhere, that have no chance of evolving. However, some civilizations that are going nowhere, you just let them keep on going or destroy them, or put some elements of that civilization, mix DNA with one civilization with another civilization, see how they evolve, they become smarter. They do that and everything. And like I said, how they're not gods. The ETs are not gods. They just have more abilities they're able to do, or they're not gods though. And nobody should see them as gods whatsoever, because they're very fallible. They, there's good and bad ones out there, and they, they're gonna let us have our own demise, and stuff like that. From what I've heard, is that they try to save some of us, but most of us would just end up dying off and stuff like that. And the thing is, it's not their responsibility to save us. It's supposed to be our responsibility to save ourselves. And the thing is, I have no I do not feel secure in any way with the way governments are today. It's in a very, very bad place, and how bad world governments are these days, and it seems like they just don't give a shit about the people, that they don't. They only care more about themselves and lining their own pockets and doing their own thing. And the sad part is, only the rich and most powerful people and the politicians that start these wars will be alive. That's the worst thing. That's something to think about.
Your human ancestors at that time. So they would be intelligent. They were discovering how to control fire. They had a lot going on. How could we possibly talk to them, however? What could we say to them that would be meaningful, that would be helpful? Like, basically nothing. And it's very possible that the cognitive gap between these other beings and us might even be greater than the cognitive gap that we would have with our ancestors. And so from their point of view, they might be thinking, what could we really say to these humans if they have the ability to understand space and time in ways that we just can't? What if they have like a 20% greater cognitive surface in their brain than we do? We wouldn't be able to understand reality level, possibly the way that they do, and
10,000.
And it might be very difficult for them to explain things to us. So I think their attitude, I would like to think, is don't step on the flowers of this garden, because you might really mess things up. Don't talk to these people. You can take them, you may abduct them, you may do things, but actually explaining much to them, I suspect that's a policy that they just don't break it.
Well, that's the thing, is that I thought I knew about this. I don't know. But with some abductees that I know of, or that have not been used for crossbreeding purposes, is that some people that have had visitations by even a version of the grace or whatever, what they'll have to do is that they'll have them look into stuff on psychic abilities, psionics, quantum mechanics, theoretical physics, remote viewing, and stuff like that. They'll tell some people to look into study that. And some of these people that have had, these interactions with ETs have actually learned these abilities from these extraterrestrials. Like I said, you have different extraterrestrials that do different things. Some are bad, some are good. And some want to teach us, and some want us to have this awakening, and others just want to use us for their own selfish, evil machinations and stuff. So, twisted.
I'd be remiss, Richard, if I didn't ask you about something our audience is very interested in, which is the idea that there are physical structures that have been detected underwater that raise questions about their origins. And one of them, for example, is on Google Earth. There were claims of an extraterrestrial or NHI base near Catalina Island. often linked to what's called the Sycamore Knoll anomaly, which is about 6 miles offshore between Malibu and the island.
Just the ones that
there's allegedly a geospatial anomaly, a massive pyramid-like structure approximately 3 miles wide that was originally visible on Google Earth. And I'll give the coordinates here: 34.0351 degrees north, 118.9012 degrees west. And that so-called Sycamore Knoll object was reportedly blurred or wiped in April this year off Google Earth. Have you heard about this? And am I just pushing along a conspiracy theory, or has it
I think
intellectual curiosity?
Yeah, this is the object. We've been talking about this for a couple of years now. It's extremely interesting. To my knowledge, we have not been able to get...
The thing is, you're not going to get to the truth. They let that out. They leaked it out. But there's a lot of stuff here that they're not showing. And it's like, with these satellite companies, you have to sign like papers with the DOD and intelligence stuff like that you'll not leak stuff that you may see from the satellite. If you work in the satellite industry, then you know about this stuff, that there's certain things that you can also look at, or certain things that if you do see, you can't put it out there, you have to scrub over it or whatever. And I see, different frames here. It's messed up here, this is messed up here, and everything. So don't trust Google. They only let that stuff out. Some of us already knew that there's something down there anyway.
An ROV down there. It's kind of far below. I think it's a few thousand feet below the surface, and so it's not easy. It's not impossible, though, to get something down there. And to my knowledge, I don't know that any, at least private venture, has been able to get an ROV down there to do really good photography there. So I think that's an obvious thing that we would want to do.
That's been tried before, and they will attack it. Something will happen.
As of right now, I mean, the jury is out on what this is. I mean, oceanographers have an opinion. They've talked about natural formations. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a natural formation. But maybe it isn't. I think, without a doubt, we should be looking at it. I will say that there are no...
Why did they blur it, is the question I want to know. I mean, 1 minute there was a very visible feature that you could see on Google Earth, and the next minute it disappeared. Why?
Well,
try to hide something.
It would be suspicious, would it not? And if there's something that is actively...
There's a lot that they're hiding, that Google's hiding.
Force behind the scenes is trying to hide, then yes, they could certainly work through Google to do that. Google is a self-project of U.S. intelligence back in the 1990s. We all know that. So why wouldn't that be the case? There are a number of anomalies on Google Earth when you look at the ocean floor that I do not know how one can explain. I have tried to find explanations. I've really not found good ones. Geometric patterns on the floor of the ocean that just...
Boy, this is all...
They don't look natural to me. I've not found any oceanographer who's able to explain these in any realistic way. We're talking about anomalies that are potentially 15,000 feet below the surface of the ocean. How the heck do these end up the way they do? I just don't know. There's a couple of strange ones. There's one in the Gulf of California, so not far from all of that, but inside the Baja California Peninsula there, between that and Mexico. In the northern part of that, and I remembered looking at that, and there's something...
From what I've been told from some people, how some of our underground bases are connected and everything underground. I definitely expect their stuff to be connected underwater as well, subterranean, way down deep. They'd have stuff underground under the ocean floor, and have stuff all over the planet. Because I know Japan has a Japanese triangle, they have a Russian triangle, they have all these different places around the world where UFOs are seen going up and out of the water, including the Great Lakes as well, Great Lakes region. So
very bizarre there. But they're all over the place. There's these bizarre geometric formations that seem to be on the ocean floor. What the heck are they? You got me. I don't know how to explain them. Maybe there's a digital effect that we don't know about, that I don't know about, but it seems odd to me that these exist, to be quite honest.
Those are two
now, Richard, where I really enjoyed your first book in your USO series is when you started using the statistics in a really interesting way. And there's a change that occurred after 1968. Can you please explain that to me? I found this particularly intriguing.
It blew my mind, frankly. So one of the things that I did with each case was to create about 15 or 16 categories about each case. So color of the craft, shape of the craft, what was the behavior? Was it exiting the water? Was it under the water? Did it emerge from did it enter the water? Things like this.
Hold on. I need to take a leak as well. Hold on. Ugh.
And one factor that I also put in there was very simple. Did it happen during the daytime or at night? This did not always, when you look at some of these early cases, like usually you can tell, was this in the daytime, at night, based on the description. A small minority of cases, I wasn't able to determine that, so I left those out. But by and large, you couldn't always tell, like, was it at 2:15 or 2:30 in the afternoon or 3:30 in the afternoon? Sometimes the details weren't that precise, but usually daytime and nighttime was there. So I noted that whenever I could, daytime or nighttime. And so what I found was up to the late 1960s, around 1967, of the cases that I deemed good enough to include in my study. And I need to be careful about that, because I weeded out a lot of cases where the bones just weren't there, there just wasn't enough description, and they could have been genuine, but I thought there's not enough information here, so I'm leaving it out. So after all of my own personal filters, I had about 700 cases, and I looked at them all, and I saw right up until about 1967, it was almost exactly 50-50 day versus night. Almost exact. I think 51% were in the daytime and 49% were at night. That's how close. After 1967, it's almost like flipping a switch, where the cases that I have are 75% taking place at night, which is a pattern that's continued to this day. These are USO cases. Now, I don't know if this is the same with aerial UAP cases, but I would like to go back and try to do that. That's a problem because there's so many more thousands of aerial cases.
Now,
but
Richard,
USO.
Yeah, I've got a friend who, how does one say this politely, they have a knowledge base going back to that era. They're retired, but they worked in a very senior geospatial role, and they've been a very useful source to me. And I rang them and I asked about this really interesting change, and they chuckled and essentially confirmed what you say. And I thought it might have something to do with the fact that towed sonar arrays were being developed in the 1960s, and that maybe the use of towed sonar arrays was what made the change. They instead pointed me to the introduction of the Corona spy satellite in 1967, the KH-4B, and they said this likely explains the shift which they confirmed towards nighttime activity. In fact, you say now in your book that 73% of sightings now occur, the USOs occur at night. And apparently, I'll throw this at you and see whether you think this might explain it. There was an upgrade to the Corona spy satellite program, which is America's primary optical reconnaissance satellite during the Cold War. And it struck me when this bloke told me about it, it happened at exactly the time you're talking about. Higher resolution imagery, 6 foot per pixel, compared to the previous 10 foot per pixel in earlier KH4 models. And what this allowed for was better detection of surface level anomalies like wakes, foam trails, or brief emergences that USOs might produce. And since these satellites relied on film-based optical cameras, they could only capture usable images during daylight passes over targeted areas, such as oceans and coastlines, making daytime operations riskier for submerged objects trying to avoid surveillance. And my source told me that in September 1967, is when the KH-4B's enhanced capabilities debuted, which is pretty much when you're talking about in your book.
I'm very gratified to hear this.
Yeah.
I had speculated as well that it was satellite technology that prompted this switch to nighttime. I didn't know that specific level of detail that your contact mentioned, so I'm really glad to hear this. But it's absolutely true, well, there's a few things to say about this. So, first of all, the changeover from 50-50 to essentially 3/4 was so immediate and so dramatic that I thought this clearly seems like this is a decision that someone made. Secondly, the percentage of nighttime encounters with military are even higher. In fact, have always been higher than for civilians. Even pre-1967, they were higher. But after 1967, military encounters are in the high 80s%, like almost 90% of military encounters with USOs occurring.
Forgive me for interrupting there, but that's really interesting. I mean, that suggests to me that if we are talking about a highly advanced technological intelligence, it's deliberately stealthing itself.
Yes, exactly.
Military observation.
Exactly. So there's when I'm so glad that I ended up doing this statistical dive, even though I'm not a statistics expert by any means, but I just thought I'm going to do this. I want to look at all of these categories and just see what patterns I can find. This was one key pattern. And so I had to ask, it doesn't seem random. It seems like a behavioral decision. And it seems that they are making decisions, like they can distinguish between military and non-military because the behaviors are different. One of the other things that's different with the military encounters is that they have a much higher percentage of electromagnetic interference that takes place. Now, you could say, well, the military vessels have more that could be interfered with. Like they've got radar systems. Most commercial or private vessels might not have things like that. But still, private individuals, you've got a motor on your boat that can go down, which sometimes happens. You've got your watch which can stops. But nonetheless, EM interference is way higher with military encounters, which again seems like a behavioral difference here. So this is why one of the reasons why
give me an example, Richard.
Are just random.
Give me an example of a ship that's been hit with this kind of electromagnetic interference. I've had people who were on aircraft carriers assert to me that there's been instances when the aircraft carrier has been completely disabled, dead in the water, as a result of some kind of EM influence, presumably from a USO
they don't
or
want
UAP.
to get down by them either. So.
Yeah, I've found these cases as well. So
what's a good example?
Well, there's a kind of a famous case, mainly because I've been talking a lot, because I just think it's so amazing. But I'll mention it here because it's worth it. July 2nd, 1971, involving the USS John F. Kennedy aircraft carrier. Now, we have a lot of information on this based on the testimony of one witness. We have his name. He's gone public. He spoke years ago to Dr. Stephen Greer for the Disclosure Project. And he wrote about this in a few other contexts. So we've got a few instances where he's described this. He ran communications, or he was at communications at that time. He described the communication systems that the JFK had, 4 inbound, 4 outbound comm systems. He talked about it, and he said it was about 8:30 in the evening on July 2nd. They were possibly in the Bermuda Triangle, just putting that out there. From how he described it. And he said, the first thing I noticed is that the comms, all the communications coming in were total gibberish. Nothing was making sense. And then he heard on an internal comm system, a sailor, essentially screaming outside, "It's God, it's the end of the world." So that got...
Well, there's portals. There's like wormholes, stuff like that. Ships got missing, different times, different time, space or whatever. People have flown, disappeared. People have sailed, disappeared. That place is a temporal time-space distortion all around there and everything. And whatever you think, the craziest stuff, that's what happens in these places. And people have gone in and out there, and missing times happen. So, I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff has happened there.
Got his attention even more. You can imagine. He goes outside to see what is happening, and he says there is this massive, glowing, spherical object just above our ship. And he described it as having like orange and yellow colors, maybe reddish, kind of mixed around, swirling. He said it was about as large as a beach ball held at arm's length. Very large, seems to me. He watched it for less than 1 minute, maybe 30 to 60 seconds. And he said the ship went to general quarters, battle stations at that time. So he had to return to his station, and he did not see this any longer. He learned later, or he had heard later, that ship's weapons were also not operable during this. And this went for another 25 or so minutes that the ship was on general quarters. So the engine didn't die, but the ship was incapacitated for close to half an hour.
So what we're seeing in the oceans mirrors what we've seen in nuclear facilities, nuclear weapons facilities at places like Malmstrom, where nuclear missiles have been shut down. Do you think that's a case of the phenomenon demonstrating to us petty, puny humans that even the best of our technology can be essentially disabled?
Yeah, it could be a demonstration, or it could be just them testing us. I don't really know what new tech was aboard the JFK at that time, but it was a leading source of U.S. power projection to the world at that time.
Yeah, it is. That's what they do. It's like, that's what they do. It's like, you guys think you could do this? We could do a lot worse. I've seen a pyramid-sized UFO over the Pentagon. And that thing could just, it's as big as the Pentagon. And it could have blown the Pentagon to bits and everything, so.
Wouldn't be surprising to me that they would think, let's check them out and see, can we disable this system? Can we deal with that system, and so forth, in their very methodical way, and then they're gone.
You actually talked earlier about electromagnetic interference being quite a common feature, but I was really struck by what you said in your book was that since 1951, 9.5% of all of the USO cases that you've looked at have had electromagnetic effects.
That's exactly right. Those of the cases that I've included, the first EM encounter case that I noted of USOs. This is different from aerial objects, UFOs, but of USOs is 1951. So from that, I started from all of my 1951 cases onward, and that's 9.5%. That percentage is much higher when you separate out military from civilians. The military
in fact, military vessels were twice as likely to suffer electromagnetic effects as, say, a civilian vehicle.
Twice, yes, that's right. Twice as likely.
Well,
so what's going on there? Why are they specifically taking an interest in our military? And is there as Robert Hastings in his excellent book has pointed out, is there a link with nukes, with nuclear weapons or nuclear power?
To the second question, I think there is a link. Yeah. And I just say this because of my history of looking at aerial UFO encounters over the years, or UAP encounters, where there was a study done by a PhD statistician over at the J.L.N. Hynek Center for UFO Studies, CUFOS. His name is Donald Johnson. He's a great guy. And he did a statistical analysis years ago where I think he demonstrated very, very clearly that
UFOs.
That there was a statistically higher, a notable interaction between these objects and nuclear installations. And I think he made his point very well. So it makes sense that any visitors would be interested in our nuclear technology, and that would include nuclear technology at sea, which I think is the case.
Is this phenomenon of unidentified submerged objects relatively new? Like, is it a 20th century phenomenon, or did your research show that it goes back through history?
I tried looking to see how far back would it go. And I didn't have any preconceived opinions one way or the other. I just wanted to ask myself, how far back does this go in terms of like cases that I could have confidence in? The first case that I have genuine confidence in is in 1717. So you could decide, well, that's a long time ago, or that's not a long time ago. I mean, we've got many cases of ancient UFO sightings going back to Roman times or even earlier. For the record, some of those I think are good or potentially good, and others I don't have a lot of confidence in those. I tend to think that we overstate some of these ancient cases. Having said that, I'm not here to debunk all ancient UFO sightings. I just think that we need to be a little more rigorous with some of them. But in the cases of USOs, there's a few potential earlier ones. People wonder about the Christopher Columbus sighting from 1492 as he was approaching the New World. And that is an interesting sighting. I don't know that we'll ever get to the bottom of it. Columbus himself wrote about it. His son, who he spoke to about this, also wrote about it. So there were basically what he saw, and one other of his shipmates, was a light rising and falling as they were approaching what they once called Hispaniola, the Dominican Republic. But we don't really know what it is. There's a few earlier ones as well that I think maybe these are USO cases, but they're just not that clear. So I didn't really know what to make of them.
One of the things that really leapt out to me in your first volume of your USO book, Richard, was luminous wheels, pinwheels. It's a constant feature of accounts, particularly quite authoritative accounts from the captains or the first officers of vessels at sea, often Royal Navy or American vessels and Russian vessels, recording luminous wheels underwater.
Fascinating.
It's a very common feature, isn't it?
Yes. The great UFO pioneer Charles Fort wrote about these in some of his collections. Charles Fort spent years at the New York Public Library going through old newspaper accounts and just looking for weird stuff of all types. Frogs falling from the sky, or what we would call UFO sightings and the like. And one of the things he found these luminous wheel accounts. He wasn't the only one, though. It needs to be pointed out. Many people have reported them. So what are they? Well, a typical case would be a ship captain, as you mentioned, would make a newspaper account seeing massive, like hundreds of yards diameter, these often rotating luminous wheels. So it would be spokes coming from a central luminous hub that itself could be quite large. The lines of the spoke could be extremely wide, wider than the ships themselves, and they would be rotating. Now, without a rim to the wheel, it should be. So usually they're just the spokes, and they would go out to a certain distance. It could be hundreds of yards of length, or even more. And they would be seen rotating. One ship's captain claimed to have calculated the speed of these, and I think he said something like 80 miles per hour traveling around his ship, very fast. We're talking like 1880s, 1890s, some of these accounts, 1870s. They're clearly written in a serious way. There's consistency. Most of those that I found were in eastern waters, the South China Sea, the Strait of Malacca, also the Arabian Sea. Sometimes these were seen there, also in the Persian Gulf.
So just to devil's advocate for a moment, I know Tim Gallaudet, you actually acknowledge this in one of your appendices in the first volume. Tim Gallaudet suggested that these pinwheels, these wheels, might be some kind of biophotoluminescence.
Yeah, I respectfully don't have that opinion. I think I disagree with it. Tim, I mean, I have major respect for Tim Gallaudet, and he knows that. He cited, and we both looked at a study from the early 2000s where scientists out of, I think, San Diego look at what are called dinoflagellates. So these are very, small organisms that can be luminous, especially when you agitate the water. This is well known by oceanographers. They understand this very well. And also, sea creatures can create such luminosity as well. Dolphins, schools of dolphins and things like that can create a luminosity below the water. So this is all well understood. This one particular study...
I hate these stupid retards that always do that. Say, it's bioluminescence. Yeah, well, they can only stay in the water. They can't go up and fly into space or whatever. They can't do that. They can't go from space to earth and air, down to the water, go all the way down, up and down, go back, forth, this way, break physics and all sort of stuff. These idiots that say that.
Study claimed to have tried to reproduce the phenomenon that we're talking about here, and frankly, they did not reproduce it at all.
Not close.
They could produce streaks occasionally, short-lived streaks, not the types of things that are being reported by these ships' captains of these massive, absolutely massive pinwheels that are rotating for an extended period of time. One of them was reported by a U.S. Navy commander in 1949 in the Persian Gulf while he was coming up to the Strait of Hormuz, which is very narrow, very key choke point of naval and ocean shipping. He's going through it, and he said there were 3 of them in succession that came. They surely seemed to be approaching his vessel. They went under his vessel. One of them went directly under his ship. He actually drew it out. It's been reproduced. My illustrator, Alan Levine, did a very nice illustration of that for my book. And that Navy commander actually thought, well, yeah, it might be some kind of natural formation, but he had no idea. He's just reaching here. I just don't think that we've figured out this in a naturalistic way. It does not make sense to me to say, yeah, dinoflagellates, and we're agitating the water.
That is so retarded.
I don't think so. I mean, there are too many. First of all, you would think that you'd see them more geographically spread around the world, and they're not. They're not in Western waters. They're almost exclusively to what I've seen in Eastern waters.
One of the things that I thought was very interesting was you quoted from an academic investigation by Professor Kevin Knut, which basically looked at the issue of why alien species might prefer the oceans. Can you talk us through that? Absolutely. Kevin is a great guy, a very smart person who's deeply interested in this subject, and I love that I'm able to communicate with him about this. So Kevin has stated, he's given his own theories as to why the waters make sense. And there's a lot of reasons the waters make sense for a visiting intelligence. One is just protection. If you are not used to dealing with the type of solar radiation that we are used to here on planet Earth, the waters offers a perfect insulating shield for that. Water also offers a great consistency of temperature variation, which is nice. Water offers a great level of consistency of pressure at certain levels. I mean, water pressure can be very, very great, of course, the further down you go, but there's a consistency at each level, which is good. So right off the bat, and also, of course, it's a great protective environment from us human beings who generally can't get down that way. It also struck me too, Richard, that if solar radiation is an issue, it might also explain why the number of sightings is increasing at nighttime. Yeah, why not? Why not, indeed? Although then I would have to wonder, why were they not a majority of the cases that I found pre-1967? I don't know if that's the answer. But nonetheless, solar radiation would be one definite reason that if that were a problem, you would find the water to be amenable. And then also, I mean, what if you're from a water planet, or you're used to the water? Well, water might feel like home. So I think Kevin Knuth had a number of very good suggestions, and yes, I did kind of expound on those in my book. Let's draw to a conclusion, Richard, and it's at this point that I ask you to encapsulate everything, solve the mystery for me, tie it up in a bow, and provide us with all the answers. I have a strong sense that even at the conclusion of your formidably detailed 3-volume history into USOs, you're not going to have a definitive answer. Is that the case? I don't have a definitive answer. But I have my thoughts and my theories, and I actually very much enjoy trying to make sense out of this. That doesn't mean that I succeed, but it means that I'm constantly trying, because I don't want to just be to log one case after another. I think we owe it to ourselves, and especially those of us researchers who've spent enough time with this. I think it's a responsibility, frankly, at least to try to puzzle this out. For me, if there's a lesson that stands out from all of this research on USOs particularly, one is that we are profoundly outmatched. And
I mean, these beings, whatever they are, they operate with total command of our physical environment. They appear and vanish at will. They neutralize our most advanced systems. They move through mediums that still defeat our best engineers going transmedium. We can't track them properly. We cannot predict them. We cannot even really record them reliably because they seem to control what our instruments capture. It's a very one-sided relationship. But I would go further and just say, the disadvantage isn't just technical. I really believe it is psychological. We think like a species at the center of our own story. So, you know, we're always in danger of projecting human motives onto non-human intelligences. And I'm guilty of this as well. But we assume that they should talk or negotiate or behave according to our logic, and I don't think that they do. And their silence kind of drives us crazy, including me. Like, I want them to land on the White House lawn. I want them to tell us what they are. I'm sure we all do. But they don't do that because, well, they have their reasons. But the fact that they don't denies us any narrative closure. That might be a way to pull it, to describe it. So we fill the void with our own ideas. But they act with precision. They act with detachment. They act like, I hate to say this, but they act like scientists, or they may act like custodians that operate under a very strict set of parameters. And there is restraint there. I'm not saying that there's no potential threat, but there is a definite discipline to how they act. And
there is.
You know, we're the primitives in a monitored world. And we're still fighting over who should be even allowed to talk about this. I don't know that they need to conquer us. I think our own ignorance helps them along. We're not ready to deal with them. I just don't think we are.
Final question, Richard. In your own words, describe to me what you think this is. Is it an intelligence? Is it advanced? And is it us or something else?
I think that we have arrived in our civilization trajectory to a level where we are now interesting to others. Not necessarily a danger to others, maybe, but we're interesting. In just the last 4 or 5 generations, we have gone from literally horses pulling wooden carts to where we are now, sending probes that have left the solar system, quantum computing, strong AI, all of that. I mean, it's unbelievable in the snap of a finger. So I think they know this. And I think that makes us interesting to them.
Seems impossible.
And so they're watching us more carefully now than ever before. And they're adapting to our ability to notice them, but they are still not willing to openly come out to deal with us, because I just don't think that I think they realize we're not able to. So there's a very, very detailed thing going on. Now, are they infiltrating? Are they trying to do more? Are they trying to control us? That's not impossible to my way of looking at it.
But they've already infiltrated us.
You know, if we were them looking at these humans, we would see a very unstable civilization that might do really, really well or might really flame out. And is it in their interest to have a say in that, to manage this process? It's not impossible. If we were charged with doing counterintelligence on behalf of Earth's security, we would have to consider that possibility. And we would have to consider the possibility of whether or not they have genuinely engaged in any kind of infiltration or management or control or influence over us. That could be malevolent from our point of view, or it may not be. But we certainly want to know about it. And I think we would be very naive to rule that out.
Well, Richard Dolan, what I take away from your magisterial ambition to create a 3-volume history into unidentified submerged objects is that there is a greater mystery under our oceans and bodies of water all around the world than perhaps we've realized before. Thank you so much for bringing this mystery to Reality Check and trying to explain it to us. Look forward to having you again on soon sometime.
It's been my pleasure, Ross, and thank you.
Interesting to see some of this stuff as well. surprised he doesn't know some stuff that I do though, but because I have interactions with ETs out here. Seems like every night, just about, whenever I want. So I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, I think he's been around this longer than I have, maybe. That's why I say that he should be knowing a lot more. But anyways, I usually do this have people talk and everything, leave life, do anything. I don't know if I'll come back on it a bit or not. Depends. But I think I'll do right here for right now. This part. Have a good morning or night. I might go outside and see if they're out there. I know they're always out there. They're always out there. Whether they want to show themselves or not is up to them. And sometimes they just show little glints, but they do that as well. I was thinking about seeing about those people if they want to see UFOs out here. I want people that are serious about it to see the UFOs here. I want serious people, not people that just a little interested and then they go off and do other stuff, because I want to put my own time into it. They're always here. They're always around me and stuff like that. But for me to put my own time into other people versus other things as well, and I'm very lucky to have ETs give me attention, and only few people get that and stuff. And I was going to show some pictures or vids or whatever, but I want to make sure there's nothing that shouldn't be there as well, because I have, I used to do some adult work and stuff like that. So anyways, I want to make sure that everything's clean and everything. But anyways, I just want serious people and stuff like that, and that want to see these things and be to them and stuff. So